Good evening. Welcome to the meeting of the Planning Committee. Firstly, I'll call upon the clerk who will advise how the meeting will be run this evening.
Thank you, Chairman. We're trialling a hybrid meeting arrangements with registered speakers and councillors who are not members of the Planning Committee given the option to join via Zoom. We don't have anyone attending today via Zoom, but we will be live streaming the meeting so that people can watch via the Council's YouTube channel. We're trying to encourage more people to engage in our public meetings. The proceedings of the meeting will also be recorded. Please can I remind everyone to use their microphones and make sure they're switched off when they've finished. Please can attendees present in person refrain from watching the live stream as this will cause interference for other viewers. In accordance with the Constitution, members of the public who have registered to speak will be permitted to do so when invited by the Chairman. I've confirmed those registered to speak once they've arrived at the meeting. We're not expecting a fire alarm today. In the event of an evacuation, please leave by the nearest exit and gather in the car park next to the library opposite Tesco. Please can you also ensure that your mobile phones and iPads are switched to silent. Each application will be dealt with in the following order. The Planning Officer will present the submitted report. At the end of the presentation, the Planning Officer will outline the proposed recommendation in full. Any registered speakers will be invited to address the committee in the following order. Speakers against, neighbourhood forum representatives, any councillors who are not members of the committee, followed by speakers in support of the application. All speakers will have a maximum of 5 minutes to address the meeting. This will be followed by questions from members and responses from the Planning Officer. Once questions from the committee have concluded, the Chairman will open the application for debate. At the conclusion of the debate, the Chairman will seek a proposer and a seconder for the application. The proposal must be in full and include all information such as conditions or reasons. The Chairman will then confirm with the Planning Officer if they wish to enter into a period of summing up. Members, if at any point during the meeting you have to leave, you will not be able to vote for that application. We will be taking regular breaks, comfort breaks throughout the session. Thank you. I will now hand back to the Chairman.
Thank you. I'm aware that we do have some apologies and substitutions. Could you just advise to that, please?
Yes, Chairman. We have Councillors Chris Lewis and Steve Darling for Councillors Barbara Lewis and Councillor Dart today.
Thank you. We've got a couple of sets of minutes to record as correct. So these are the minutes from the meeting of 9th of May and 10th of October 2022. We'll take them as one, I think. So is there a proposer for those two sets of minutes as accurate, please? Councillor Jackson is proposing a seconder. Thank you. Councillor Dudley. All those in favour? Okay, thank you. Those minutes are carried. Declarations of interest. Do any members of the Planning Committee have any pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest on any of the items on today's agenda? Please raise your hand. Councillor Kennedy, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I am Ward Councillor and Chair of the Broadsands, Churston and Gampton Neighbourhood Forum. 3 applications fall into my area, Kennels Road, Brokenbury and Venus Cafe. I am not predetermined. I will consider it on the merits tonight and look at each one objectively. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And like I said, as long as you're here with that open mind and not predetermined, that shouldn't be an issue. Officers, same question. Any declarations of interest, either pecuniary or non-pecuniary? No? Okay. Great. I'm not aware of any urgent items from either governance or planning. No. So in which case we'll move on to the first application of this evening, which is Greenway Farm, Kennels Road, Churston Ferrers, Brixham. Reference is P2020-0657. We've confirmed through the clerk that those who are going to be speaking this item are indeed here. So firstly, I will ask Miss Verity Clark to introduce the application. And I understand she's not here, so actually will be Wendy Ormsby giving the presentation. Thank you.
Yes. Good evening. So this proposal seeks retrospective planning permission for the erection of an agricultural barn with access from Kennels Road and associated landscaping. There have been a number of objections to the proposed development for the reasons that are summarised in the officer report, but landscape impact is one of the key concerns. There's also some letters in support of the application. So this slide here is showing the site location plan, the red line showing the application site, and the blue line showing adjacent agricultural land that is in the ownership of the applicant. Shows the position of the access into the site, which is reusing an existing access, and also the proposed additional hedge banks which have been created around the site. The site is in reasonably close proximity to the south, area of outstanding natural beauty, which lies south of Alston Lane here, and then also over to the west of the A379 in this direction over here. You'll probably see that more clearly on the next slide. The site is designated as being within the countryside, within the South Hams area of conservation for greater horseshoe bats, and it's also close to the Kennels Road, other site of wildlife importance. And it's within a settlement gap as identified in the Brixham neighbourhood plan. And the site itself forms part of a larger agricultural unit of approximately 620 acres or 251 hectares. So this is an aerial view of the site, showing the site before the barn was put in situ, and this shows a bit more clearly here. So this land over here is the AONB, and this land over here is the AONB. Just by way of update, since the officer report was drafted, there's been one additional letter of objection, raising no new material planning considerations. So this drawing shows the siting of the building and shows it to be approximately 22.5 metres at its closest point from Kennels Road. The planning statement says that it's 23.85 metres from the road, and the reason I'm raising these is when I come a little bit later in the presentation, the distance from the road has been quite a key issue on whether or not this needed planning permission. But what this also shows a little bit more detail is the hedge bank bunding that's been formed around the barn by way of screening. So this shows the elevations. It's a typical modern agricultural barn. The building itself measures 18 metres by 24 metres, with an eaves height of 7 metres and a ridge height of 9 metres. You can see here photographs of the barn in situ. So this is taken from the lay-by view through the access point into the site. This is a front view of the front elevation of the barn. Down the west side, down the east side, and a view head-on from Kennels Road onto the front of the barn, and then from further up the road, looking down towards the barn and the barn roof here. So, key material planning consideration that we need to take into account is the planning history of the site. And the plan before you here is showing a previous approval. So the erection of an agricultural barn of this size, in many cases, is permitted development. It's permitted under Part 6 of the General Permitted Development Order. But an application for prior approval must first be submitted to the local planning authority before it can be constructed under permitted development. In 2019, an application for prior approval was submitted and granted for an almost identical scheme that we're considering today, the only difference being the siting of the building and the colour of the roofing material. In the prior approval scheme, the building was shown as being over 25 metres away from the road. And to be permitted development, the building has to be more than 25 metres from the road. And this is showing the approved layout for the prior approval scheme, which showed the building located over 25 metres away from the road, meaning it met the criteria to be permitted development, and the prior approval application was considered on that basis. This is showing the elevational plans that were submitted as part of that prior approval that was approved. And as you can see, it's identical in its external appearance and size, the only difference being the roof colour, which is now, it was shown as grey and it's now anthracite grey. So these are the key material planning considerations which need to all be taken into account in assessing this application. Policy C1 states that outside settlement boundaries, development required for agriculture would be permitted, provided that the rural and landscape character, wildlife habitats, green corridors and historic features are not adversely affected, and necessary mitigation measures are carried out to minimise any harm to the environment. And policy E3, which refers to settlement gaps within the Brixham neighbourhood plan, states that within the settlement gaps, development proposals must meet the criteria set out in policy C1 that I've just outlined. So the proposal for an agricultural building is therefore considered acceptable in principle in a countryside location, subject to the visual, landscape impacts or ecological impacts. These impacts are all assessed in the officer report. A key consideration is that in assessing the prior approval application, the Council's decision notice stated, no further details are required, as it is considered that the development would not detrimentally impact on the character and appearance of the open countryside or its visual amenity. So the scheme we're considering today is identical to that scheme, except for being approximately 2.5 metres closer to the road. Officers consider that that makes no material difference to the landscape impact, and as such, a refusal on landscape impact grounds could not be justified. The impacts on ecology, heritage, residential amenity, highways and flood risk are all considered to be acceptable for the reasons set out in the officer report. This slide here sets out the relevant development plan policies that have been taken into account in making this assessment. And the officer recommendation is that of approval subject to the conditions as outlined below within the officer report, with the final drafting of conditions delegated to the Divisional Director of Planning, Housing and Climate Emergency, and the resolution of any new material planning considerations that may come to light following Planning Committee to be delegated to the Divisional Director of Planning, Housing and Climate Emergency, including the addition of any necessary further planning conditions or obligations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Ormsby. Move on to speakers. I call upon Mr Philip Rannell to address the meeting in support of the application. Thank you. So please do take a seat. You'll have a total of 5 minutes to address the committee. We'll prompt you when you have 1 minute remaining, but otherwise make a start when you feel comfortable to do so.
Yep. Good evening, my name is Philip Rannell. I farm 650 acres with my family and a couple of employees, being a mixture of owned and tenanted land between Brixham and the River Dart. Our farm is very diverse, producing beef and lamb for Marks and Spencer's. We also grow a wide variety of crops in an 8-year rotation. In 2018, I obtained prior approval to build a barn, an agricultural storage barn along the A379 Kennels Road. I then built the building and accidentally mismeasured the site location by 4 feet. It was a genuine mistake, and it was at no advantage to me at all. The building is sited away from the main farm yard for health and safety reasons and biosecurity. Our farmyard has grown over the years, and the existing hay straw buildings are now surrounded by livestock buildings. For the stringent farm assured schemes demanded by our customers, which are focused more and more on health and safety legislation, we no longer permitted to store certain flammable materials in close proximity of each other. Added to this, in order to prevent the destruction of the surrounding livestock buildings in my farmyard in the event of fire, we needed a storage building away from the main farm. Every year you see on the news dozens of barns that have been burnt down, mainly caused accidentally or possibly spontaneous combustion. We have lost 2 barns in the past due to arson, which is why the new barn is fully clad and the doors are locked. I love farming, and the farm currently produces roughly 1,000 prime lambs and 30 tonnes of beef a year, together with enough wheat to make 250,000 loaves of bread and enough barley for 4 million pints of beer, plus numerous other raw materials which are processed by people in this country. We have a small wind turbine and barn-mounted solar panels on our farm that produce more than double the amount of electricity we currently use. And with 20 acres of woodland and a countryside stewardship agreement, including wildflower margins, wildlife corridors, and protecting 2 scheduled monuments, we try to do our bit for the environment. We manage a square mile of great-looking countryside, with less than 2% of that covered in yards and buildings. I know some people do not like the new barn location. However, we need the barn to serve our agricultural business, and it does not block any resident's view of the bay, nor does it affect anyone's day-to-day life. The Broadsands, Churston and Gampton Neighbourhood Forum complain the barn is built on the skyline, but the building has been dug in between 1 and 2 metres lower than the A379, and the land to the south and west are higher than the barn, with trees on the north side. We built a bank on 2 sides to link the existing hedge bank that will be planted to provide screening and biodiversity enhancement. The barn is built in the countryside to support an established farm business and meets policy C1. The barn is exactly as detailed on the prior approval, except for being 4 foot out in sighting. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Renau. Members, we move on to questions now for the case officer. I would kind of slightly steer, or like to steer, your debate and questions to the fact that this is obviously, as you heard in the presentation, political development and the reason for it now being in front of the committee. So I would like to hear a lot of questions and debate around the concerns about impact on the landscape. I had Councillor Manning indicated first, and then I'll bring in Councillor Christopher. So Councillor Manning first, please.
It's not going to affect the flooding at all where it is. On your thing, it has been looked at. Has that been looked at properly?
Yes, it's been assessed by the council's drainage engineer and he has raised no objections.
Councillor Christos, please.
The previous permission is a material planning consideration. The council took the view in granting the prior approval that the landscape and visual impacts of the barn were acceptable on the basis of that scheme. So my advice would be that what we need to be considering is any of the changes, and the only change is the siting, does that materially make a difference? So is it going to be significantly adverse or worse in a way that the previously approved scheme wasn't? It would be very difficult to justify and say that the barn in itself, if it was moved back, or if you took that slither off, that we would then be saying we would want to be refusing planning permission for the barn per se, having regard to the prior approval, which clearly state that the council's view was that the visual impact was acceptable.
So, thank you very much for that. So, going on from there, the moving the barn 4 feet further away from the road would not improve the view or any other component of what the original planning. What I'm trying to get is, if you moved the barn the 4 feet that by mistake it was done, would it improve the view or anything else that we're not taking into account?
The officer's opinion is no, it doesn't make any material difference whether it is where it is now or if it was shifted 4 or 6 feet in the other direction.
Good, thank you.
I've got Councillor Kennedy and then I'll take Councillor Hill. Councillor Kennedy, please.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed the photograph that you showed us is actually coming down the road, but actually what we're not seeing is if you're travelling from the start of Kennels Road towards the AOMB, have you got any photographs in the other direction as you're driving up Kennels Road?
I don't have on this presentation, but this morning there were a number of members who were able to attend the virtual planning site visits, and we did on Google Street View. We looked at it coming up the hill as well as looking at it coming down the hill.
Thank you. You also talk about the prior approval. It wasn't previous planning permission, it was a delegated decision, and it was all around prior approval. I've had a look at the officer report. I'm not looking at the decision as you've pointed us to, but to the officer report. And I'm struggling to find anything within that report which relates to any local policies, the MPPF, or the permitted development rights specifically for agriculture and forestry. Now, under that, there is a 25 metre from the road rule, but there is also one around sizing, which isn't just the building size, it is the external area. There is also one about the buildings have to be assimilated into the landscape. And new buildings would normally form part of a group rather than stand in isolation. But there is nothing in the previous report that indicates that those points or other policies have actually been taken into account.
The officer report, I agree, doesn't make specific reference by turn to each of those points, but does reach the conclusion that it does meet the criteria. Well, there's two aspects to a prior approval. You're firstly looking, does it meet the basic criteria of being the right size, the right distance from the road, etc., not being in the AOMB. There's various criteria, and then if it does, then the local planning authority can then consider certain aspects, and of those, the external appearance and visual impacts are something that can be taken into consideration. And I agree that the officer report makes no specific reference to those the prior approval matters of visual impact. However, the decision notice does clearly say that it is considered that the visual impacts and landscape impacts are acceptable. So that is the decision that this council has made. Whether it's made under delegated powers or at committee, it is still the decision of the council.
Mr. Catterall, you'd like to come in?
Yeah, just to clarify, Chairman, the prior approval is actually the grant of planning permission, so the prior approval and PD rights acts to grant planning permission, just on a point like that. And I think Wendy made the point at the end there that the council has to be consistent in its decision making in general, and so that includes assessment of external appearance and visual impact as parts component of the decision making. The council ought to act consistently.
Thank you. Councillor Hill, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It's an agricultural building on agricultural land, and it's built 4 feet in the wrong direction, closer to the road than was designed or was given approval for. What other considerations for objections are there?
So do you mean what other issues have been raised by people objecting?
Why has it been allowed to come to the council when it is an agricultural building on an agricultural site, other than the fact it's 4 feet from the boundary?
It was brought to committee. There have been a considerable number of representations against it, and that was the principal reason that it was felt appropriate to bring it to the planning committee.
The other objections, though, they would have been covered when it was given planning permission. They're delegated through delegated. Were they not? Was that not considered? Were none of these objections? Was the original objections not put forward? So because people are objecting after it's built?
Then it would have followed due process. It would have prior applicant. It would have been advertised, and any representations would have been taken into consideration at the time. Yes.
So these are new objections once the building's built. Is that correct? Because had these objections been put forward originally, would they not have been dealt with by the officers concerned?
If there had been objections, then they would have been referred to the ward members in the usual way, with the opportunity to have called that to planning committee.
So there were no original objections?
Objections. I can check that for you.
Because I find it difficult to understand why it's come to come to planning now. If I can just continue.
If I may, Councillor Hill, and I would welcome any subsequent input from Wendy or Mr. Catterall, but I think the issue, because obviously it does hinge, on that 4 foot, because and the impact on the visual landscape there, and you've heard the officers' consideration that it's not adversely affected, and I really think in the interest of being robust in our decision making, we have to steer towards that central subject, and whether knowing what you know about planning, whether you would agree with the officers' conclusion on that issue. Councillor Mills, please.
Can I just clarify something? We seem to be talking about 4 feet. Isn't it 2.5 metres has been mentioned? And it seems to have shrunk down to 4 feet. What is the accurate distance, please?
Measuring from the plans, the closest point to the road was measured at being 22.5 metres.
Right.
So therefore 2.5 metres.
Right, so 4 feet doesn't come into it, it's actually 2.5 metres, which is quite substantially larger than 4 feet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mills. Any further questions, members? No? Okay, in which case we'll move into debate. Members, any debate, please. Councillor Chrysler, please.
I don't know whether substantial, what the difference would be, but even if it was 6 foot, I wouldn't call that substantial. I mean, farmers have gone through a really difficult time recently. We've heard from the local farmer how he's farming over 500 acres here in the Bay. If we want to keep our green and pleasant land, we need to show some support to those farmers. And we've heard today that the barn if you've built it 4 feet the other way, or just over 4 feet, not substantial, I wouldn't say, but say 6 feet, you know, I think it's time we gave a break. You know, it would have been approved except for that 6 feet. We've heard today that it won't cause any more hardship. It won't block the view for those 6 feet. So I would like to ask people to support this and support our local farmers. We as a planning committee, when, you know, development on green and pleasant land, we said we want to keep our green and pleasant land. Here's the chance to do it and help the farmer who needs this barn, as we've heard, for his stock, for storage. And if we don't support it and he has to move it 6 feet, it's going to cost a lot of money to do so. Or he may actually say, well, let's go and farm elsewhere. So I would like to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. I have a number of hands raised. But first, I'll come to Councillor Thomas, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The way I see it, as a committee, we need to be acting reasonably. Do I believe that getting the applicant to move the dwelling 4.5 feet, as I can work out, to be reasonable? Well, no, I don't. The impact on the street scene does not seem to make a difference in its current position. So I would be proposing, or happy to propose, the support of the application along with the conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. I have got you, Councillor Manning, but actually I've got Councillor Kennedy first before.
Thank you, Chair. And of course we support farmers, Chris, but we do want the buildings put in the right places and according to our policies. The permitted development rights for agriculture and forestry is there are a number of items which need to be taken into account, and it's not just about the 25 metres from the road. It must not exceed 565 square metres, and that's including the outer section. It's not just the building, and I believe this might just exceed it if we actually, but that side. It should be assimilated into the landscape and not actually stick out onto the skyline. And from the direction from going south, I think, towards the AONB, it actually does stick out and block the view of the AONB. Now, the local plan policies, C1, which none of the policies have actually been considered or don't appear to have been considered in the previous application. And I think what I would suggest is just, perhaps yes, we need to be consistent, but if a planning officer hasn't correctly applied the right policies, we shouldn't be consistent in getting it wrong. I think one of the important things is that yes, C1 is important, but it has to match other policies as well. At the time that this application was being considered before, the Brixham Peninsula Neighbourhood Plan had not been made. And although E3 policy has been quoted, what is missing is that E3.2 goes on to state that development should not harm the openness or landscape character of the area, including through visual impacts and/or would otherwise result in harm to settlements in their wider landscape setting. So there are other things to consider. It isn't just your 4 feet. I think we've got to think about, if it does happen, and it has happened a lot in Torbay, that people don't think they can get planning permission on something, so they go ahead and do it, and then seek retrospective and find that, more often than not, we will roll over. So I think it's time that we actually showed we do have some teeth, and there are policies. If policies are in place, particularly national policies, and this is in breach of a number of national ones, they should be followed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Manning, please.
I agree with Chris Lewis. We should be looking after our farmers and supporting them. it's nice to see we are looking after, or hopefully looking after them, instead of having houses built on their land instead. We're supposed to be really trying to be self-sufficient in this country. If we keep building houses on our farmland, we won't be. And if we turn down things like this, you'll turn around and think, well, why carry on farming? You know, we've got to support them. And for 4 feet, I quite agree. I think it's a silly thing to say no to. So I'd like to second with Councillor Thomas, and I think it's a good thing, and we should say yes to it. So,
okay, thank you,
Thank you.
Councillor Manning, and I'll come to you first when I'm looking for that seconder later on. Councillor Mills, please.
Thank you. I'd like to refer to policy C1 because it said it would be permitted if no adverse effect on rural landscaping character. I firmly believe that this building does adversely affect. I'm all for farmers. I think they're doing a fabulous job, and I think this farmer is working incredibly hard. I just don't think that this building is in the correct place. It's in a countryside location which has huge significance to the vistas and views opening out across the whole of the bay. You can actually see the building if you're standing in Cherson Village, and if you're standing in Alston Lane, the building is on the skyline. If you drive down from Kingswear on Kennels Road, there's a serious loss of outlook as you drive down. The bay doesn't open out in front of you. There is a large black barn on the right-hand side. It's in a very prominent position, and I think that the size, scale and visual appearance is not acceptable where it is. We have a huge field. We had a picture. There's a very large field. I can't see the importance of it being right on the road, which could have an impact if it goes on fire for cars travelling up and down the road. So it would be perhaps an idea to have it further down the field where it's not got such a huge visual impact. I think it's important for the farmer to have that, but not in the position that is in at the minute. Thank you.
Any further debate, members? Councillor Darling, please.
Thank you. And I think we just need to, as others have alluded to, apply some common sense here. Whether it's 4 metres or 2.5 metres, and we heard from the gentleman who spoke earlier on that it is an oversight from him. He stated that. I see no reason why we should disbelieve him. We also heard very clearly why it was not with other buildings, that this is about keeping stock and other equipment safe should the building go up on site. So I think that we should see this as a committee as not somebody trying to do us over as a local authority, but a genuine error that could have a catastrophic impact if we chose to be Jobsworth and follow it to the letter of the law for the sake of 2.5 metres or 4 feet, whichever it is negligible. It will have an impact, but the impact it will have would be extremely similar, is the officer advice that we've had before us this evening, whether it was in the original location or this location. So I hope common sense will prevail tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I agree.
Thank you. Any further comments, members? I mean, for my own part, I mean, I don't particularly like retrospective applications. It's always frustrating. We'd much prefer, obviously things to be approved before they're built. But retrospective applications do happen. But I, in this case, absolutely believe the speaker that I can't see what advantage would be accrued by deliberately moving the item closer to the road. Obviously this is a genuine, honest mistake that's happened. I think farmers are the curators of our landscape as well, and they look after it. And it is an agricultural setting, and I'm not a farmer, but if you're, I like the farming landscape, as perhaps we all do, and that comes with the farmlands, the farm fields, and the equipment that goes with it to make the farming happen. And we can't kind of pick and choose and say we don't like that particular element to it. And I've driven past the site, and I genuinely don't believe it impacts harmfully on that visual landscape, bearing in mind it's an agricultural setting to begin with. So I too will be supporting this. I will go back to Councillor Jackie Thomas, who earlier indicated you'd wish to propose.
Yes, please. Chair, happy to propose approval along with any conditions in the report. Thank you.
As per the officer's report.
Yes, thank you.
And I will go back to Councillor Manning, who indicated a willingness to second that. Is that still the case? Yeah. Okay. So we have a motion on the table. Councillor Mills, please. So is this a debate relating to this motion?
I would just like it to vote noted, please. Okay.
I did refer to Clerk on that one.
Chairman, just to clarify, Councillor Mills, are you asking for your vote against this to be recorded, or are you just objecting at this stage?
No, I would like, when the vote is taken, for it to be noted who voted where.
Okay, we'll take some guidance. 1 second. Whilst the clerk is doing that, is there any further debate on this motion in front of us for approval? No? Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. In order to call for a recorded vote, you require the number of councillors to indicate they wish to do so to be quorate. So that is 4 of you. So I would need 4 members of the committee to indicate that they wish this to be taken by recorded vote.
Okay. So I see.
3.
Okay, so the quorate's been met.
Chairman, that's happy. 4 members have indicated, so happy to take as a recorded vote when we get to the voting in a moment.
Which I think is probably now, unless we do have any further debate on this motion. Okay, so I assume the process is the same as full council, whereby the clerk will read out your name, and when she does, please indicate whether you are for this motion for approval, against, or abstaining.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. So I will work my way around to the left so that I can record this, as normally at council we'd have 2 of us doing this. Councillor Dudley.
For.
Councillor Kennedy.
Against.
Councillor Hill.
For.
Councillor Steve Darling.
For.
Councillor Manning.
For.
Councillor Chris Lewis.
For.
Councillor Mills.
Against.
Councillor Jackie Thomas.
For.
Councillor Pentney.
For. So that motion is carried. The application is approved. We move on to the second application of this evening, which is a land at Brokenberry Farm, Gampton, Brixton reference P 2021-0658. Again, it's been confirmed that the speakers for this item are indeed in the room. Mr. Alexis Moran is the case officer, so would you please give your presentation, please?
slides aren't changing. The slides aren't changing. So the site is Brokenberry Farm. It's located to the south of Bascombe Road and to the east of Bridge Road. There are residential dwellings to the north and the southwest water treatment works is to the south. The site comprises of 2 arable fields with no existing structures on site. This is a photo taken from Brixton Road looking north towards the site, which is beyond the trees in the distance there. This is an image taken along Bascombe Road looking into the site, which is well shielded by boundary trees and shrubs. And this is an image taken from the Brixton Peninsula Neighbourhood Plan, taken from a field gate on Bridge Road looking east towards Churston Village. At the Planning Committee meeting of the 10th of January 2022, this scheme for the formation of a solar farm and associated equipment was deferred in order to enable consultation to be carried out with the Devon and Somerset Fire and Rescue Service, to ask if the applicant would consider if the panels would be relocated to the adjacent field to improve the visual impact, and to engage with the community on an acceptable scheme. The revised layout shows that the solar panels have been relocated, with the majority now being within the eastern field, over an area of 0.7 hectares. The remaining 33 panels are to be located to the low-lying easternmost point of the first field with ancillary buildings, and an access track is proposed along the southern and western boundary of the site, providing access to Bridge Road. The panels will be enclosed with dark green perimeter fencing with a height of approximately 2 metres, and the panels would have an energy generation capacity of approximately 2 megawatts. The existing agricultural use of the western field will remain. The proposed development is temporary over 30 years, and it's proposed to be fully decommissioned at the end of this period, restoring the land to its agricultural use. The proposal also includes a new species-rich native hedgerow along the perimeter of the fences, as well as enhancements to the existing northern perimeter and to the southern hedgerows. And I would show you these, but unfortunately, nothing. So there's enhancement planting along the northern perimeter of the development there, as well as enhancement planting to the existing hedgerow between the two fields. The proposal also includes the addition of this landscape bund towards the centre of the site. The purpose of this is to provide additional visual screening towards the development from Bridge Road. And the cross sections shown here, so the key ones are D to H, which are through the site and across the site from Bridge Road. And the cross sections D to H show that the bund limits views of the development from Bridge Road, with the line of sight being over the bund and beyond the panels. So just to reiterate, it's quite hard to see here. So the bund is there, and the view would be over the panels there, so limiting their view from Bridge Road. The revised location of the solar panels is also set further to the east and on lower ground, which limits the overall visual impact from the field gate on Bridge Road. And this artistic image shows that the bund prevents views of the panels from Bridge Road. And this is an additional artistic image from the bridge on Bridge Road, looking across the field. The cross sections pick this up as the most extensive view. This shows that there are limited views of the development from this location. Conclusions from the updated landscape visual impact assessment state that the predicted visual impact of the proposed development in the revised location from Bridge Road is low, with some minor visual impacts arising as a result of the site entrance and track running along the southern edge of the field, which you can just see down here. Views of the proposed development within the eastern field, so that's the second field, are fully screened by the central hedgerow and further by the bund. The addendum to the statement of community involvement advises that additional consultation was undertaken, which resulted in the relocation of solar panels. With regards to fire safety, the fire safety officer has advised that if the proposal is subject to building regulations, then the proposal must comply with the requirements of approved document B of the building regulations. The fire safety officer forwarded the proposal onto the operational risk team and advised that they would respond accordingly if they had any comments. No further comments have been made with regards to fire safety, and it's considered that there are no concerns with regards to that. 4 additional objections have been received to the scheme, which relate to being an inappropriate location, disruption caused during construction, impact on wildlife, health risks and loss of agricultural land. It should be noted that there's no clear evidence to suggest that solar panels present a significant risk to health and safety, and it's not a reason which would reasonably be used to refuse the grant of planning permission. In conclusion, officers consider that the revised location of the panels addresses concerns of members in terms of the visual impact. The revised siting of the panels is deemed to accord with the requirements of policies E3 and E6 of the Brixham Peninsula Neighbourhood Plan, and the statement of community involvement advises that additional consultation was undertaken. The fire safety officer has been consulted on the application with no concerns raised. The revised location would not result in unacceptable harm to the character of the area, local amenity, heritage assets, biodiversity or highways impacts, and will have positive environmental impacts by reducing Torbay's carbon emissions and helping to achieve its carbon neutral 2030 targets. It's considered to be acceptable having regard to the Torbay local plan, the Brixham Peninsula Neighbourhood Plan, the National Planning Policy Framework, and all other material considerations. The officer recommendation is therefore one of approval, subject to the conditions outlined on pages 55 to 62 of the agenda, with final drafting conditions delegated to the Divisional Director of Planning, Housing and Climate Emergency, and the resolution of any new material considerations that may come to light following Planning Committee to be delegated to the Divisional Director of Planning, Housing and Climate Emergency, including any additional necessary planning conditions or obligations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. We now move on to public speakers. Firstly, I will call upon Mr. Ian Russell to address the meeting against the application. So welcome to the committee, Mr. Russell. You'll have a total of 5 minutes to address the committee, and I'll prompt you when you have 1 minute remaining. But make a start when you're ready to do so, please.
Good evening. For speed, I will read a statement. For those who do not know me, my name is Ian Russell, and for over 30 years I have owned an environmental health and safety business which is presently located in Churston Ferris, and I am a resident of Bascombe Road. I am completely against this plan to develop a solar farm at the proposed Brokenbury site for many reasons, which include highway issues, both at Dartmouth Road, Bridge Road Junction, together with the restricted access down Bridge Road, which is already at capacity. The proposed site lies in a key Greater Horseshoe backflight path and forage area, which should be environmentally protected. Moreover, the northwest corner of the proposed site has particular archaeological significance in respect of Bronze Age settlement, as referred to by Professor Mike Parker Pearson's letter to the consultation body. Professor Parker Pearson is a world-renowned Professor of Archaeology at the UCL Institute of Archaeology, London. Today I am here to especially object to this proposed development on the grounds of health and safety of the local residents, and most particularly of the 1,500 grammar school children. We are all aware of the need to establish renewable energy rather than fossil fuels to help deal with climate crisis. However, I would like to point out that solar farms are normally located on agricultural land in open countryside, far away from any residential zone, and certainly never close to a school with 1,500 young pupils. This is because solar farms may have adverse impacts. I would like to take this opportunity to raise these concerns so that the Planning Committee may make educated and informed decisions as to whether you are happy for this installation to go ahead in an area where there are many residential properties, as can be seen from the drawing, and where our children go to school. The main reasons for my concerns are predominantly associated with fire risks and subsequent health and safety issues. The fire risks on solar farms are normally caused as a result of arcing of DC isolators and potential inverter issues at the solar farm control station. In recent years, there has been an investigation by the BRE National Solar Centre in Cornwall into fire and solar PV systems, and they have evidenced in their report 80 fires, 6 of which were at solar farms, with 3 fatalities. Moreover, with the intense density of these industrial solar panels and associated cabling, emissions of electromagnetic radiation, EMR, occur. EMR has been noted by the World Health Organization's Institute for Cancer Research to be linked to the cause of many varied cancers. Greater research work needs to be evidenced on this issue, but the EMR and potential fire risk issues certainly present a known and significant health and safety factor when determining the suitability of site location. Therefore, sites should be located sufficiently far enough away from any urban zone, which is not the case in this planning application. In such a fire situation, extremely toxic gases may be released into the atmosphere, including carcinogenic gases, hydrogen fluoride, hydrogen selenide, and cadmium, which are all extremely dangerous.
You have 1 minute remaining, Mr. Russell.
And may cause cancer on exposure. All are associated with solar panels and lithium batteries. These potential dangers would be far too close to many residential properties, and more importantly, far too close to Churston Grammar School with 1,500 students. Thus, my submission is that this solar farm is potentially to be located on an ill-conceived site, adjacent to residential homes and a large school, which is completely the wrong location from a health, safety and ecological perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Members, we have one non-committee councillor wishing to speak to this item, so I'll call forward Councillor Long, please.
Thank you. Am I all right here, Mr. Chairman?
So much can be heard. Yes, that's fine. As with all speakers, you have 5 minutes, and we'll prompt you when you have 1 minute remaining, Councillor Long.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for letting me speak. It is perhaps apt that this item is being discussed whilst COP27 is taking place, and it's interesting that at COP, both Egypt and Sudan have reported that they are experiencing water poverty for the first time, and at that same time, this country is also still experiencing a drought with reservoir levels still at low levels due to the warmest year on record and perhaps the warmest November on record. And it is predicted that due to climate change, seawater levels will rise by over 1 metre in Torbay and lead to more flooding, and will also lead to more intense rainfall, which is the wrong sort of rain, as it leads to flooding rather than filling rivers, etc. Torbay Council declared a climate emergency in June 2019 and is committed to becoming a carbon neutral council, and is working with the community to become a carbon neutral community by 2030. Nationally, the UK is committed to becoming net zero by 2050 and to a 78% reduction in greenhouse gases by 2035. As many colleagues know, I do like a good strategy, and the Council's adopted energy and climate change strategy highlights the importance of generating clean, low or zero carbon energy to meet our local and national climate change targets. The way we power and heat our homes, and crucially for this application businesses, needs to change. Solar energy generation is a positive way we can do this, and I was pleased to see that the previous application, the farmer was leading by example by having solar panels on his barn, on his farm. Currently in Torbay, just 1.6% of our electricity consumption is provided by solar panels, mainly from small roof-mounted panels. The Brokenbury farm scheme is predicted to generate an additional 2.7 megawatts of clean energy and will power a southwest water facility with any excess power going to the national grid. This application has been amended following its previous appearance before this committee, with the planning committee's concerns taken account of, for example, with additional screening to minimise the visual impact. According to the report, the operational risk team of Devon and Somerset Fire Authority have been given the opportunity to respond if they have any concerns, if they have them and have not done so. And I sit on the Fire Authority and know the various officers there. None of them have spoken to me about this, and so I urge the committee to vote in favour, if I may. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Long. Members, I noticed in your enthusiasm there were a few hands raised, which is great. I have noted who you are, but we do have one more speaker before questions. That being, I'll call forward Ed Brown, please. Please come forward. Welcome to the committee. As with the previous speakers, you have a total of 5 minutes to address the committee, and you'll have a reminder at 1 minute remaining. But start when you're ready, please.
Thank you for your time. I'm Ed, the Development Manager responsible for the planning submission of the solar scheme. I would like to thank the committee members for its comments made at January's Planning Committee. The committee members deferred the application but provided a solution whereby the solar panels were moved from Bridge Road, away from Bridge Road being a viewpoint into the site in question. A number of committee members suggested that if the solar panels, originally located in the western field next to Bridge Road, could be moved into the other field, being the eastern field, away from Bridge Road, with any excess panels being located within the eastern field, away from the Bridge Road viewpoint, then in principle this would be acceptable. In addition, some members also advised that they would prefer to see a natural-looking earth bund to screen solar panels on the far side of the western field from Bridge Road rather than the new hedge bank. This is what's been provided in the revised drawings. The western field has an existing ridge approximately in the middle of it running north to south. The existing ridge is proposed to be increased by approximately 2 metres with a gentle 1 in 6 slope, which once completed will read as part of the natural topography of the field rather than an engineered earth bank. The increased field ridge will remain outside of any areas of archaeology, avoiding any impact upon the archaeology on site, and screen the panels behind it from Bridge Road. I'm pleased to note that the technical consultees have raised no objections as covered in the planning officer's report. This includes the Devon and Somerset Fire and Rescue Service addressing concerns that their comments were not available at January's planning committee. Fire safety is covered by building regulations. The technical design of the solar scheme will be designed to be building regulations compliant. Careful consideration has been given to the visual impact. All existing hedges and trees on the application site are to be retained and enhanced with additional tree and hedge planting. The only light proposed on the site will be located adjacent to the kiosks in the southern corner of the western field away from residential properties. The light will be triggered by motion sensors when access is required and positioned to direct light towards the kiosks within the site rather than light spilling beyond the site boundary. No other lighting is proposed on site in order to be sensitive to residential properties and ecology. The glint and glare assessment also concludes that there will be no impact upon residential amenity. The proposed scheme is capable of producing 2 megawatts of solar power. A private wire will connect the solar scheme to the adjacent water treatment facility which serves Torbay residents. Providing sustainable power to the water treatment works which is used by Torbay residents will help protect the natural environment for everyone in Torbay. The solar scheme is capable of providing all the energy requirements of the water treatment facility, with any excess power being exported into the national grid. The proposed development demonstrates a clear commitment to tackling the climate crisis, which led Torbay Council to declaring the climate emergency in 2019. The proposed development will generate clean, green energy and contribute towards Torbay achieving net zero emissions. The CO2 saving for a 2 megawatt array would be in the region of 458.75 tonnes of CO2 per year. For the assumed minimal operational life for 25 years, this equates to 11,468.75 tonnes of CO2 in total. As a final comment, the proposed scheme is sought on a temporary basis and after a period of up to 30 years will be removed with the land returning to agricultural use. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Members, we now move to questions. I've already seen hands from Councillor Manning, Councillor Lewis and Councillor Darling. So I'll go to Councillor Manning first, please.
A couple of questions, actually. One is, how far away is it from the school? Did you know?
It's approximately 360 metres from the school.
360 metres, all this electricity being made, it seems a big solar farm just to supply West Country, the water department. And surely the water department make enough money from us normal people working to pay for our water. Why are we supplying them and not supplying our houses for people who live in Torbay?
Yeah, so they're buying the energy that's produced by the panels from the council.
Sorry?
The Southwest Water would be buying the energy.
They'd be buying it
from the
right,
council.
we're not giving it to them. That's okay, right. I have another one actually. I've forgotten what it was now. That'll do anyway. Okay, thank you.
If you remember that, Councillor Manning, we can always come back in later. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Strangely enough, I sat on this committee when this last came up, and my reservation there was the risk of fire. And I see on page 31 of the report, and I'll just read it out, only take a minute. The Fire Brigade's fire safety officer advised in their consultation response that the proposal had been forwarded onto the operational risk team and that they would respond accordingly if they have any comments to make about the fire risk. No further comments have been received and therefore it is considered that there are no risk concerns. I hate that sort of statement because no one's commented, there's no fire risk. As this came up last time and was one of the major issues why it was refused, and clearly I would have thought the officers made that clear to the fire authority, that they would actually be bothered to send
Sorry, Councillor Lewis, is there a question coming, please?
Yeah, there is. Oh, very near. I would have thought the fire authority would have actually sent a report here saying that they were either happy or not. Was that asked to the fire authority, or were we happy just to take that they would comment if they thought there was a problem?
Yeah, so I think the key word there is if. They would comment if they thought there was an issue. As we haven't received a comment, then I think that's fair to say that they don't have an issue with it.
So, Chairman, if you write an email to someone and you don't get a response from it or any comment, that person may not have got the email. Therefore, taking the fact that there's no risk could be that they never got the email.
Well, it says the fire safety officer forwarded it to his colleagues, so I would expect that they would have picked that up.
Okay,
if I may, Councillor Lewis, it's like if another way of phrasing it, like, are you saying you've got confidence that this has been communicated, and have you got confidence that an absence of response can be taken as, you seem to be suggesting, as in there isn't a concern here?
So that's the way I've understood it, yeah. So that the use of the word if they had a concern that they would raise it. But as we've already heard, that the fire risk is covered by building regulations as well.
But my point, Chairman, I won't labour it, is that in the old days you would say there's no paper trail. And that's what concerns me. There's no response from the fire authority saying with this development, we don't believe there's any risk or it is minimal. I mean, we heard from our speaker that, you know, deaths had occurred. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Otherwise, I'll be going into debate. Thank you.
Councillor Darling, please.
Failing to turn myself on there. So, I am concerned what we're seeing by Thank you. So in light of that, I think we've heard from officers, but can we please have it reiterated that the actual work of the fire authority will click into place at the time of building control being engaged rather than at this stage? Can you confirm that that's the case?
So, subject to building regulations being required, it would do, yes. And they would normally get involved with their foundations and that kind of thing, and that there would be some foundations required for some of the ancillary buildings, particularly the transformer.
And can you please advise us in your experience? Gone off, right, let me, try again. Okay, so in your experience, are the fire authority very often in failing to come forward when they have key concerns? Please. And was there any fire... So I'll try again. And also, I'm just wondering if there was any feedback from the previous solar farm that we had engagement with about fire risks, because clearly the fire authority would have engaged with that if they felt there were issues.
Yeah, so the comments were very similar in both cases, that it would either be dealt with by, if it requires building regulations, then it would be covered by building regulations, and that the concerns were forwarded onto the operational team for further comment.
Councillor Jackie Thomas, please.
Thank you. Similar question, really, and similar concerns. In regards to the speaker this evening refers to 80 fires resulting with toxic gases being released in some similar solar farms, such as, I suppose, the one proposed this evening. Is the officer aware of any fires in these locations and other schemes such as this one?
No, I haven't done intensive research into it. I'm just going by the fire safety precautions from the experts and from the information in the reports that is also drawn up by experts that advise that they're very safe in terms of fire safety risks.
Okay.
Councillor Manning, please.
Thank you. One of the objections said about the traffic. Will there be a lot of traffic because of this? Will there be a lot of traffic, a lot of people working there?
Only during the construction phase. Then the site is monitored off-site, so there'll be very
so it won't cause any more traffic or a lot of people being there?
Very limited.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions, members? Councillor Hill, please.
Thank you, Chairman. With electrical cables and such, there's arrays are produced with the pylons and the such, and many years ago there were concerns that birds and animals were had deformities being underneath the rays of these pylons, and it was an issue that came up for years. And you can check on MAF if you want to check on this. Are there any risk with this system, with these solar panels, as it's only 300 metres from a school? The eggs were... farmers were building chicken runs and such under and around pylons, and the eggs were being addled right from the beginning, and deformities were being shown.
So there's no clear risk in health and safety terms to, with regards to radiation, and not risks that are reasonably considered to be reasonable for refusing planning permission. So there's no clear evidence to suggest that they would cause any issues.
There's no clear evidence, and we don't have sufficient information to say one way or the other. Is that correct?
It's like you could have solar panels on your roof. It's exactly the same as that. I mean, they're just, there's no further concerns. In general, there are no safety concerns.
I think, Councillor Hill, if I may, as well, like there's this expression I often have to, when we had things about 5G masts and things like that, like you can't prove a negative. We have to go on what evidence is actually available to us. Yeah. Any further questions, members? If not, okay, we'll move. Is this a question, Councillor Kennedy? Or okay, straight into the debate, Councillor Kennedy, please.
Thank you. I think when this came to committee before, there were actually two concerns. One was the siting, and it didn't conform with local policy. And I'm very pleased to say that they've come back with an application which does conform with our development policy. So I'm very happy to, when it comes to it, propose approval.
That's noted. Thank you. Any further debate, members? Councillor Darling, please. Your microphone, please, Councillor.
Well, hopefully it might work this time. So I would just echo that clearly over time the policy has, the proposals have been reviewed. It's heartening that local board councillors are able to endorse this. Issues have been raised around fire issues, and I would say that we can only deal with the facts that are in front of us, and I would remind members that building control is the route forward for dealing with any of those fire issues rather than raising any false flags.
Councillor Mills, please.
This may not be the right place, maybe I should have asked it earlier, but I think Alex mentioned 30 years and Ed mentioned 25 years. So what is the lifespan of these? It was 25 and then suddenly 30s appeared.
Mr. Moran.
As far as I'm aware, it's 30.
Be very brief, please, sir. Just yes or no.
So commercially,
Okay. Any further debate, members? Okay, in which case I'll seek a proposal and I'll go straight back to Councillor Kennedy, please.
Yes, I'm happy to propose approval as per the officer report.
And Councillor Darling, are you indicating a desire to second?
I'm happy to second as long as we endorse the recommendations within the report. Thank you.
Okay, members. A motion for approval is on the table as per the officer's recommendation. All those in favour, please raise your hand. So I believe
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, Chairman.
those against and abstaining. So the motion is carried. The application is approved. So members, I'm going to suggest we will hear the next application and then take our break after that, unless anyone is ferociously against that idea. We'll continue with a third application. Okay, let's crack on. So it's the third application to consider is land at Mackay Avenue, reference P 2020-0722. Again, the speakers are indeed here. So yes, Mr. Blackwell, please introduce the application when you're ready to do so, please.
Thank you very much. This is the first of two applications from me as case officer. This is the application at Tourmarine, otherwise known as land at Mackay Avenue. The site has remained vacant for over 15 years and originally formed part of the wider South Devon College before it was redeveloped for housing. In terms of site ownership, Torbay Council have approved the disposal of the site to Torvista Homes. So this application proposes the erection of 72 extra care apartments. Yeah, is that any better? Can you still hear me? Yeah, does that work? Okay, good. Right, so the application proposes the erection of 72 extra care apartments. It's classed C3 with parking, communal lounges, courtyard garden and cafe on the ground floor. And those full proposals include, it's basically a broadly L-shaped building, which is orientated around an open area facing southeast towards Tor. Due to the topography of that site, the building will vary in height from 4 stories to the north, facing onto Mackay Avenue, to 7 stories to the south, facing Newton Road. The lower ground floor will include vehicle access from Mackay Avenue and 20 parking spaces. This L shape, as I've said, is centred around a communal garden which is facing southeast, with the main pedestrian entrance from the west, which is considered fully accessible from the Richardson Walk, which dissects between the site and the children's play area. There will be a public cafe, which will occupy the southern end of the ground floor corner, and the ground floor will also include those communal lounges, treatment rooms and core facilities such as waste storage, scooter spaces, staff office and a laundry. Those upper floors will be 61 one-bedroom apartments and 11 two-bed apartments, and the flats will be a mixture of wheelchair adaptable and accessible, with 2 suitable for bariatric wheelchairs. For clarity, so this is an extra care housing. It's self-contained for residents with care and supported needs. It's available to all age ranges, and residents benefit from the facility being staffed 24/7. This extra care facility will have no age restriction, but all occupants will have care and support need, whether that's mental health or physical disability, and they expect a high proportion of residents to have some kind of mobility issue. The building will be fully accessible with lifts and staircases, and finally the elevation treatment of the building will include a range of brick style finishes, terracotta tiling, zinc, metal cladding, metal and glazed balconies. Just a quick update. The recommendation was based around the engineering service manager being satisfied with the level of detail. That has been providing additional information and he no longer has an objection. On to the site photographs. Bear with me while I change that to slideshow. Apologies, is that clearer now? So in terms of the site and its location, it's worth noting that there are a number of heritage assets in close proximity to the site. Edinburgh Villas to the southeast, the boundaries of Tor Conservation Area and Tormohun Conservation Area, both to the east and to the south. It's a very open nature at the moment, considering that it's a closely hoarded site with site security, which is viewed from Newton Road across the play area. The low-rise quick-fit building occupies the southern parcel of land and in the distance into Tor, so the site is visible from the southeast. It also enters from Mackay Avenue with those views through. Mackay Avenue itself looking south, you can pick up the development as it runs through the edge of that site. So running through the existing site survey, which I'm sure you're all aware is basically a hoarded site at the moment, various bits of vegetation in it and remnants of the start of the process of construction. Just as a point of context, that original site, the original position of South Devon College, oh, it's not changed. Apologies, it's not changing on the, that's the one I use, yeah. Right, minimise it. Oh, I see, okay. So I can go like that. Oh, there you go. Apologies, more technical issues, user error. So the original site layout, just for context, you can see the South Devon College within the centre of that site position. You can see, for complete clarity, what was the previous permissions in 2005 and 2012. This is 2005. You can see the 7 stories, the bulk of that development stepping down towards Newton Road and the relationship with Mackay Avenue. This is the 2016 previous permission, which is an entirely different approach again, using a lot more glazing and still using the L shape that seems most appropriate to this triangular shaped site. And onto the proposed plan, you can see here, this is the ground floor. You can see the vehicle access in the top right hand corner, access for 20 car parking spaces, a range of circulation routes which link to laundries, plant room, office, reception, and a fully accessible entrance which is F. And you can see the bins and the cafe which is in red. The first floor layout is mirrored all through the floors essentially. So if you look to the right hand layout plan, you've got 1-bed units, 2-person and 2-bed units. Those are in orange and blue, with a guest suite and you start to go through each level, you can see the range of 1-bed units in blue, 2-bed in orange, up to floor 4, and then the roof level. So it takes up a total of 7 stories with 4 stories facing Mackay Avenue. You can see part of the proposal is to allocate some of the roof space for solar panels, and you can also see green sedum roofs, and within that central core in yellow you can see a roof terrace. So for complete clarity on those sections then, you can see in the top elevation section, you can see the relationship with Mackay Avenue. That's 2 stories to the right hand side, and you can see how the development would respond to the change of level and be set down against the highway, which you can see on site now, which you can see the change of level and topography, and you can see it would be 3 stories at street level and 4 stories behind. And then when you look from the lower elevation section, you can see how that will present itself facing Newton Road. So this is the elevation looking at land at Mackay Avenue, looking at that end elevation, so as it faces, that's the east elevation, so you can see the right hand side is the existing dwellings on Mackay Avenue with the ghosted out elevation to behind, and you can see, just start to see the quick fit building and the lower end on the left hand side of that drawing. This would be the end that would face Newton Road with the existing Mackay Avenue buildings in the background and the projector of that L shape which kicks out to the right, which is sort of ghosted behind. This is the elevation that you can see from the west. So this would be that sort of key point of arrival into Tor. This is the view you get from Newton Road as leave Tor station looking towards Tor. So you start to pick up how the elevations have been broken up, with a cafe on the ground floor, and above you can see the brick elevation with a glazed majority of the glazed upper 2 floors being set back from that front elevation, and then that link back into Mackay Avenue. Just sectionally now you can see how that presents itself within the site. So those are the sort of courtyard views within the L shape. Here's some proposed details. You can see how the elevation on the top floor has been set back, and how the interaction with the existing public realm and the play area would happen. That view from Mackay Avenue, how it responds to the existing streetscape, set down and set back. That presentation from Newton Road again, as you enter that junction, as you face the site, with quick fit just in front of you to the right. And this is the original massing as part of the proposal. You note that the top floor has been, would project forward. If you go back a slide, you can see that it's now set back in a much lighter presentation. This is view within the site in the courtyard, the accessible courtyard. And start to see some of the hard and soft landscaping as part of the proposal. It's just been completely clear on details, so there's balconies proposed, and this is how they function. It's recognisable that a lot of these residents with poor mobility are likely to spend quite a long time in their apartments, so there's a lot of effort being made to make sure that glazing is retractable, that balcony space gets as much light as possible, and it's fully wheelchair accessible. And onto the photographs. So you can see in the foreground the children's play area with the existing Mackay Avenue development, 4-storey development to the left-hand side and quick fit to the right-hand side. That view across quick fit, so you can see the development that will be presented just beyond that white rendered wall. Its relationship from the distance there, where you can see the crossing point from Tor. That view across the top of the existing terrace villas. You can just pick out, if you can see my cursor, you can't see my cursor. You can just pick out the existing Mackay Avenue in the background. That view into Mackay Avenue with the existing 4-storey buildings in the background. View into the site with the existing hoarding and the on-street parking. The view across the site towards Tor. And just for context, that is the view from back, with your back to the site, looking back at Mackay Avenue. So some of the issues that we've covered in the report, I've already stated that the hydraulic information has been provided and there's no objection from the flood engineer. The existing site condition is vacant, and there's extant permissions that could be fallen back on with the previous owner. It's worth just noting how visible the site is. There's been some comments as part of the representations around the style of the building, the height, and the recognition that there's a huge amount of evidence being supported with this application around the design design statement, as well interaction with the community consultation as part of this. That link and that understanding with the existing development at Mackay Avenue and the interrelationship between the existing and proposed. And just understanding that the under-provision of car parking, which is policy compliant, but you get a sense of, if you go around there, you can obviously see that there's a certain amount of parking that goes on there, some of it on street, some of it on footways, you'd argue. And part of this proposal includes some funding which would prevent pavement parking in that area to ensure that the whole street is completely accessible for pedestrians. So, in conclusion, the proposal will result in enhancement of a current vacant parcel of land, creation of additional housing on underutilised brownfield site within a core tourism area. It's considered that the proposal deliver visual, economic and regeneration benefits, with none of the harm identified. It's considered to sufficiently outweigh these benefits. The proposal is acceptable in principle as a major enhancement to this site, minimal impact on the setting of the two conservation areas, Tor and Tor Mohan. It's considered that there would be a limited harm to the setting of those listed buildings. This is strongly outweighed by the public benefit of much needed additional housing of brownfield land. It would also provide acceptable arrangement in relation to residential amenity, highways and flood risk. And the proposal is in accordance with the provisions of the development plan, and the recommendation is therefore one of a conditional approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blackwell. We have a few speakers on this item. Firstly, I'll call upon Mr. Nigel Goodman on behalf of the Torquay Neighbourhood Forum to speak in support of the application. Welcome to the committee. You have 5 minutes to address the committee, and I'll prompt you when you have 1 minute remaining, but make a start when you're ready to do so, please.
Yes, Nigel Goodman. I'm the Treasurer of the Neighbourhood Forum, Torquay Neighbourhood Forum. This statement has been reviewed and approved by the steering group of the Torquay Neighbourhood Forum. The forum supported the consultee response, which supported the proposal in principle, providing it because it provides extra care housing. The TDA has engaged with the steering group, who emphasised the importance of compliance with the local plan and the neighbourhood plan. Our concerns related to parking, height, and the design out of crime. The parking provision does comply with the national guidelines, but we anticipate that demand will be greater than planned due to the needs for carers and visitors to the residents and may need to be thought about further. Consequently, we have noted that the borderline compliance on our checklist. The height of the building has been the subject of much debate, and efforts have indeed been made to improve the design impact, and the forum is prepared to accept those plans. The police have provided a set of conditions that address these concerns on the crime, designing out crime, and we're happy with those too. The forum has noted that there's an outstanding issue which I think has now been addressed, which is the drainage. So the forum supports the recommendation for approval, subject to the various conditions and the resolution of that drainage, which I understand has now been resolved. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman. Okay, members, we have one non-committee councillor wishing to speak to this item, so I'll welcome back Councillor Long, please. Same process as before, 5 minutes. When you're ready to start, please, Councillor Long.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm before you this evening, not just as the Cabinet Member for Housing and Regeneration, but also as a resident of the Tourmarine Estate, and I live just off Mackay Avenue, and I'll be corrected by Councillor Mills if I pronounce that incorrectly. The report states that the site has been vacant for 15 years. I believe it is nearer 19 years. I moved into the estate in 2003, and that the area in question was an empty eyesore then. And the site is part of the former South Devon College, and therefore a brownfield site, and it will be a better site for housing than green fields. In 2003, when I moved into my house, the site in question was clearly earmarked by posters around the site saying that the site was for a retirement development, and the scale of it was very similar to that which the scheme before you is now. And as I think Mr. Blackwell said, that planning application is still valid, and so in theory could be developed out at any moment in time, so that could still come forward, and that permission was approved. As things stand, there have been more than 4 applications, planning applications, and 1 amendment that have been approved by the planning committee, all of which have been similar scale to that which is proposed today. So I would be very surprised that there are any planning reasons to refuse this application. The scheme is for extra care apartments, which are very much indeed and are self-contained for residents of all ages with care and support needs. Some concerns have been expressed about parking. The vast majority of residents of this scheme will not have cars because they have care and support needs. They are more likely to have mobility scooters, and there is provision for storage of those in the scheme. There is parking provided for staff and visitors, and Brunswick Square car park is only metres away for any visitors who couldn't find anywhere to park. And if I could speak frankly, some of the parking problems on the Tourmarine estate are caused by people not using their garages to park, as is often the case. The cafe is open to all members of the public, which will be good, and I know that there were some concerns expressed about the play park being overlooked. It's overlooked already by properties on Richardson Walk and by properties on Newton Road, and in fact the play park being overlooked is a positive thing because it means that any inappropriate behaviour will be seen and put off people being put off doing any of that. And it will also be nice for families going to visit their relatives in that scheme for their kids to go and play in that play park at the same time. This scheme will be positive for local shops, particularly the nearby post office, which has been threatened with closure on 2 occasions and been successfully saved by the local community. Just having some more residents living nearby will be a positive scheme. 100% of the
you have 1 minute remaining, Councillor Long.
Thank you. 100% affordable housing. It would also be good for adult social care because people won't need to go into residential care. They can go into this extra care facility and they still save social care money. And lots of my neighbours just want the thing built, please. So please vote in favour. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Long. I'll now call upon Mr. Rob Finch to address the meeting in support of the application. So, welcome, Mr. Finch. As per the other speakers, you'll have a total of 5 minutes to address the committee, and I'll prompt you when you have 1 minute remaining, but please start when you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman. I've just revisited my speech so as not to revisit any issues already clarified by Councillor Long. I'm Rob Finch. I'm the residential team lead with TDA, working to help deliver affordable housing projects specifically for Torvista Homes, and Torvista Homes is the applicant. Tourmarine is a key deliverable part of the Torbay Council Adult Social Care Commissioning Blueprint, which aims to deliver significant extra care housing in the Bay. The scheme facilitates and supports the identified need to improve options for independent living for those with support needs and a reduced dependency on residential care homes and packages of care. The proposals before you consist of 72 extra care apartments with parking, communal lounges, courtyard garden and cafe on the ground floor. The site is considered a sustainable location within walking distance to amenities and public transport. Prior to the submission of the planning application, thorough public consultation was carried out. This consisted of a press release including interactive website, presentations to the Torquay Neighbourhood Forum, Tor and Upton Community Partnership and public exhibitions at both the Torquay and Paignton libraries. During this process, a series of questions were asked, and there was an opportunity for people to provide wider comments. The main strands of concern, I think, will be no surprise because it's been alluded to already in the meeting, were around the building mass and parking. I'll address those two concerns. In terms of massing, from an early design stage, the establishment of reduced height at Mackay or Mackay, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it, Avenue has been key, keeping the building elements at a more domestic street level at that location. The current design evolves sequentially through a series of planning consultations with taller building elements reflecting the design principles of the more contemporary design development to the south of the site. So we were very keen to recognise the difference between the Mackay Avenue elevations and moving down the site with its topography to the southern end. More recently, and to manage the perceived height of the building at the southern end, the top 2 stories of the building are now pulled back from the site boundary, as already alluded to by the planner, Mr. Blackwell. The second element in respect to parking, the project delivers parking provision in excess of the policy compliance standards. Moreover, we've worked with Torbay Highways Department to establish an agreement on appropriate measures to address the parking in the immediate area of Mackay or Mackay Road. The proposals before you seek to respond to the climate emergency with a fabric-first approach to energy efficiency, ensuring the building envelope is positioned and orientated to aid environmental comfort to vulnerable adults. Using sheltered private balconies, increased internal circulation sizes that provide open views out to the surrounding townscape. With respect to renewables, early design incorporates the generation of on-site electricity using photovoltaic panels, as already alluded to. And thermal comfort models have been produced and incorporate air source energy reclamation technologies for use throughout the building. Finally, I would like to reiterate...
1 minute remaining, Mr. Finch.
I would like to reiterate Torvista Homes' involvement in the project as applicant and owner of the project. Torvista Homes was formed to target the delivery of new investment in Torbay to support the council by stimulating the market and assist in the delivery of objectives and outcomes identified within the council's housing and corporate strategy, specifically in relation to affordable housing. This scheme will be 100% affordable housing for rent, and to support this investment, Torvista Homes requires public subsidy from the council, significant public subsidy from the council and Homes England, and to this end, delivery is key to the funding profile. To ensure delivery, Torbay Council have approved a disposal of the site to Torvista Homes, and conditional contracts have already been exchanged. Torvista Homes will then develop and manage the project. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Finch. So colleagues, that concludes the speakers. So we'll move into questions. I've seen hands from Councillor Manning and Dudley already, so I'll go straight to Councillor Manning, please.
It sounds very nice. I've got nothing against the building at all. It sounds really, really good. I'm concerned really with the being that many old people there. Have we got enough doctors' surgeries to cope with these kind of people, you know, in the area? And is there any charging points for their equipment which they need, their buggies and that? Okay. There's 2 questions.
Thank you. It's not for old people. It's for people of any age.
Age, yeah.
Any age.
Yeah.
Just for clarity.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
And there are mobility scooter spaces, and there are charging facilities within there, and vehicle charging facilities as well within the parking spaces.
Right. So there is enough doctor surgery, so you've looked into that.
As part of the consultation, as part of this being an allocated site, that would have been taken into consideration. The AHS consulted.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dudley, please.
Jim, do you think the drainage issues can be addressed quite successfully?
The drainage issues were covered with a flood risk assessment.
Okay.
Some additional information was requested. That was provided last week. and to the satisfaction of the flood risk engineer. So they've been overcome.
Okay, thank you. I think it's an absolutely great idea and great, and I'd be very happy to propose it should when the time comes along. Thank you.
I've seen you, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Darling first.
Thank you. And I just wondered if you might be able to assist a little more with Councillor Terry Manning's question, because my understanding is that unlike McCarthy and Stone, the private developer who advertises elsewhere in the country, this is actually seeking to address local need of extra care accommodation, whether you're a 34-year-old with significant mobility issues or whether you're a 83-year-old person with other care issues addressing. And I understand that there is a programme, and I don't know if you're cited on this, of trying to release existing accommodation and therefore freeing up accommodation that could be available for families, so that those people who've perhaps their families have outgrown and moved on from their homes, that it could be freeing up that accommodation for these people to be located in this extra air accommodation. But also I understand that there are opportunities of actually driving savings for domiciliary care and social services more generally through extra care accommodation and being able to support people through their own.
Councillor Darling, I was here just to remind you, this is questioning stage.
Yes, I was just wanting a confirmation of whether that was the case or not.
Can you just clarify what your question is?
I was wanting a simple yes or no answer.
That sounds very much like the Tor Vista sort of operational side of things. And the most important thing I'd say is that it scores really well in policy H6. So that's housing for people in need of care. That's really relevant because it's a really sustainable location. So I think that links to some of the elements of your question, hopefully.
Thank you. Councillor Kennedy, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just want some clarification because the Devon and Cornwall Police raised some very good points, which they've asked as conditions within, the application or the approval if we are minded to do so. I'm not quite seeing those, so can you, if they are in there, just point me in the right direction. If not, can we actually put those in, please? Because all of them are very relevant to this.
Yes, I totally agree. There was a challenge from the Devon and Cornwall Police to come up with an improved strategy for safety, bearing in mind the residents, thinking about the area, which is in relatively high demand for the police, generally the town centre and this area. Those measures have been put in by Tor Vista, some additional information about how they would tackle each element as part of the approval. There's a condition included in there, but it's part of a sort of ongoing negotiation with them to see out delivery. So that includes roller shutter access, CCTV. That whole package is being seen as one and being working through that condition. We'll do it really thoroughly to make sure that responds to the Devon and Cornwall Police consultation response.
Okay, so we, I think it's just so that we're, satisfied that it all does go in there, because I think it is about the access to the drugs, controlled area, that sort of thing. Can we put that in tonight, or is that something that you feel is still a work in progress? Because the police have actually laid it out quite clearly.
Yeah, that's in the section 11 of the report, and there's really detailed security measures being put forward by Tor Vista anyway, and that sort of whole operational about protection of drugs, that's part of the internal fabric of the building. That's also covered by that condition. It's not just the external fabric like CCTV, roller shutters, it's the whole operation of that building. So that condition will be a thorough examination. It would need to be discharged with all that relevant information. We would consult, I presume, Devon and Cornwall Police. So we're satisfied that we maintain for the lifetime of the development.
Councillor Jackie Thomas, please.
Thank you, Chair. The report states that there are no protected trees on this site. However, the report does include details of invasive species, which will be removed as part of the scheme. Can you please clarify what kind of invasive species are being referred to?
I haven't got that information in front of me at the moment, but it's likely to be not weed and things like that. So that's all part of the ecologic statement, a landscaping plan, and that will be removed as part of this thorough exercise of redeveloping the site.
Okay, thank you. Just it's not something I've come across before. Thank you.
Councillor Chrysler, please.
Yeah, you may not know the answer to this, I don't know, but is it planned that these are going to be sold off individually or kept as a group and run as a unit?
There's a mechanism for this that we're in discussion. It's subject to a nomination agreement which keeps for 100% affordable housing. So we've got that agreed with Tor Vista Homes. So it's about retaining that understanding that it'll be 100% affordable and linked to the plan set out, which is the U-Class C3, which is linked to the layout. So it's each sequence of things. So a condition requiring 20% affordable housing at a minimum, a nominations agreement securing 100% housing, and the layout itself is recognised as being C3, which is completely internal, units capable of being controlled themselves.
I don't think it answers the question whether they're going to be sold off individually or kept as a unit.
Ms. Ormsby, did you want to come in?
Yes. I mean, it may not be a planning issue. Maybe a question I should put somewhere else. But
so the proposal as put forward is that they will be rented. However, that isn't a requirement of the planning consent, but we are advised that Tor Vista intend to deal with them as being rented units.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Apologies for the lack of clarity there. That's all right.
Any further questions, members? Okay, we'll move into debate stage. Members, any debate? Okay, well, whilst I wait for hands, I think this is obviously in my ward, and there's a lot of issues associated with the site as is. So this is, a very, very promising development. I hope it's not another false dawn, because we have, as we've heard, had some consents go on this land, only for nothing to materialise. So I will be supporting this. Any other contributions to debate? If there isn't, I will go back to Councillor Dudley, who suggested he might propose a motion.
Yeah, I think it's a great proposal, well presented by Jim, and very happy to propose as per officer's recommendation.
I saw Councillor Darling's hand first, so I'll go to Councillor Darling.
Thank you. Sorry, I ran away with myself slightly earlier on. I think this is, as with Crossways, is a significant solution to some of the challenges that we do face around housing in Torbay. Looking at this purely through planning terms, it has been stated very clearly that this echoes what's previously been agreed as far as the height is concerned, and I think the additional work that has been undertaken in respect of trying to addressing issues that have been raised through the consultation is giving us an improved offer at the end of the day, and I'm very happy to second.
Thank you. So members, motion on the table for approval as per the officer's report. There's no debate on this. I will move to the vote. So all those in favour, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Therefore, the application, the motion is carried. The application is approved. So members, we've got two more items to consider. So I'm going to suggest we break now and come back for 7:30. So it just gives you 7 odd minutes to take a break. Okay, we'll resume the meeting now. So next application to consider, former Debenhams department store, 12 to 14 The Strand in Torquay, reference P 2022-0806. The speakers have been confirmed as here. So Mr. Blackwell, once again, would you please give your presentation?
Hello, thank you. This is the second one from me. This is the Debenhams site. You can see on the site location plan. The council acquired the site in May 2020 with the aim of rejuvenating this, linked to the proposed major public realm enhancements to the Strand. The application proposes demolition of the former building, the department store, in its entirety, and replaced with another broadly L-shaped 5-storey building set around a new public square. The change of level of this site, which steps down from the terrace to the north to the Strand to the south, means that there will be single storey on the terrace and 5 storeys fronting the Strand. The public square will be accessed by steps and a pedestrian ramp, which includes a range of hard and soft landscaping. Those upper floor storeys above the commercial units on the ground floor will create 16 two-bed residential units. The building at the terrace level will include the site entrance and 16 covered parking spaces on that deck. The use of a palette of high-quality materials, including anodised aluminium bronze in colour and brick and glazing details, means that the development will be significantly different from what's currently there. That is the site as you, from the aerial view, as you'd see it now. This is slightly out of date because a lot has changed to the east of the site in terms of council and others development for hotels. This is the clearest way of showing that parcel of land, which is relatively complicated given the interaction with the buildings to the right-hand side of that image there, which is the Yates Public House, a listed building further to the right there. You can see the canopy sweeping around to the ground floor of the building, Debenhams building, the 2-storey terraced properties to the retail units to the left-hand side. It's worth noting 55 to 59, the terrace, which are a residential apartment block just to the northwest, and the terrace there. So you can see that the existing building presents itself at 1 storey to this elevation, and then it drops down significantly as it reaches the Strand. Some of those issues that were brought up early in the consultation process, which has been a fairly lengthy sequence of public consultation, engagement with Torbay Design Review Panel and Historic England, have shown that there's a design evolution required here, particularly given the streetscape, the sensitivity within the harbour conservation area, the listed buildings to all around the site, including the harbour side itself and the terrace. The canopy has obviously been recognised as an important feature within the conservation area appraisal, and I'll come on to that later, which is detailed in the report, but this really does link to the improvement of the public realm, the improvement and regeneration of this site. It's worth also noting that a couple of the comments were around the design and also potential antisocial behaviour within the new public square, given some of the high demand issues for the police in that area. So onto that, just complete clarity, the site analysis. You can see there exactly the site layout as it is now. So you can see broadly L-shape, which steps down to the existing currently used bus stop outside the Strand, outside the Debenhams store, the 2-storey cottages, the existing apartment block, an area of green which is part of the topography which steps right up to the terrace. Existing plans, I'm sure everyone is aware of Debenhams, though it's vacant now, so you can see that largely a single cell building on the ground floor, the retail store, stepping up into the rest of the retail store and into storage and office, and into the sort of service quarters which are to the north of the site facing the Strand, and that final bit of element which is the single storey presentation to the terrace at the top. Was that you? Sorry. You can see the existing east and west elevations and how the building steps up to the terrace. As I said, that single storey presentation to the terrace, that North Street elevation as you walk down the terrace. A really sort of key view really as you see how the townscape is presented when you view across the harbour side. So you can see those changes of level. This is the sort of foreground here with the listed building, which is Boston Tea Party now, Yates, how the Debenhams site steps down and steps back up again, steps back down again to the existing retail store and Debenhams again, and then back up again. And this is in the distance you can see the terrace and you can see some of the new development which is going on around the site. That proposed ground floor plan then, so it's a very simple layout showing the Strand, the steps up, the ramp, extension to existing 2-storey cottages to create a kiosk, and a total of 5 commercial units, use class E. The next floors are all mirrored again, so you'll get this is just a notation of what that extension to the creation of a kiosk would be. And these are the residential units, 16 two-bed residential units, echoing the floor plan as you go through the building. It's worth noting that this is the bedroom facing, these are bedrooms facing onto the Strand with living accommodation either side. Right the way through to level 4 and then the roofscape, which is this is a landscape master plan, but it's useful to show the roof of the building, the use of light wells into the site, a green roof, and then the car parking which links to the access to the top of the site from the terrace. And you start to see there, which is some of the presentation which sort of links in with the regeneration of the site through the public realm works. Proposed elevations, just starting at the top, you can see there the reinstatement of a form of canopy, the retention of the columns from the original canopy. You can see there the stepping up and then stepping back of the development, proposed development, with a sort of lighter, with a much more glazing than it was to set that back to lighten that top elevation, and how that building then presents itself to the side when you look down towards town in Union Street in the distance. This is the existing building here, and then the single story, and then you get to the parking area to the rear, and then the other side, the creation of the public realm to the side here, which would be behind this existing two-story building. Again, you can see the setback glazed elevation, and then how the building assimilates itself into the background with the existing townscape. And you can just about see the red lines of where existing buildings are. Just for complete clarity, you can see the neighbouring Yates, how that horizontal emphasis has gone across, how the building would set back and be glazed at the top story, the creation of a really sort of grand entrance really for this commercial unit that steps up into public realm, really embracing the fact that it's south-facing, creating this burgage plot widths with different architectural treatment to reflect what was there previously, and that relationship with the existing 55 to 59, the terrace, and that extension there to the kiosk. This is the parking forecourt that you'd see, which is covered, which is on the terrace. For complete consistency there, you can see how this relates to the townscape on that southeast elevation, South Street elevation, with the clock tower appearing here. Very simplistic detail now showing how that could be used. There's the public realm, the ramp, the extension to create a kiosk, how that development creates an L shape around the space. Just some proposed details potentially on how the columns could be retained and used for lighting, how the building would look in terms of its high quality materials. The presentation of that setback, as you see the widths retained, those burgage plot widths with the residential above and balconies. Extension to the kiosk, very simplistic but quite a modern approach to the extension. And then looking further away, you can see across this proposed public realm, very different to what's there now and how that building would be presented. Upper image, what's there now, below proposed for complete context and how the building materials would assimilate themselves into the existing stone, the terracotta, and the amount of glazing and the render. A view back through from the public realm back to the harbour. I'm sure you're aware of photographs, but just to be completely clear, this is the view looking pretty much from the clock tower back to the site, back into the site. Looking at the canopies, you can see 55 to 59, the terrace there, and the terrace, the listed building behind. The view across from the terrace at the single-storey existing development. The view down onto the Hampton, which you can see there, and you can see that very low-rise existing set of buildings which respond to the topography of the site, with this forecourt parking and narrow footway. So, just in conclusion, the proposal will result in an enhancement of that current vacant Debenhams building, minimal impact on the setting, if anything, an improvement on the Torquay Harbour Conservation Area. It's considered that while there would be a limited harm to the setting of some of the listed buildings, it's strongly outweighed by the public benefit provision of much needed additional housing, commercial units on a brownfield site with overall enhancements linked to a regeneration and public realm. It will provide acceptable arrangements in terms of residential amenity, the viability of those local businesses, highways, flood risk and ecology. The proposals are in accordance with the development plan, and the officer's recommendation is therefore one of conditional approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Once again, I will call upon Mr. Nigel Goodman to address the committee on behalf of the Torquay Neighbourhood Forum. So, same as before, Mr. Goodman, 5 minutes, and I'll prompt you when you've got 1 minute remaining.
Thank you very much, Chair. This statement has also been reviewed and approved by the steering group of the Torquay Neighbourhood Forum. On page 73 of the Torquay Neighbourhood Plan, it includes a specific aspiration to improve the Strand, including redevelopment of the Debenhams building. A combination of the luxury apartments, improved retail, hotel, small restaurants will be welcomed whilst protecting the outlook from the terrace. The proposal has generally fulfilled this aspiration with the exception of the hotel accommodation, which we know is being provided nearby. There's been good engagement both with the forum and with the general public. Concerns have been raised regarding the impact on the heritage assets. They've been touched on earlier. The forum agrees that the Heritage England assessment there's only minor harm. This is outweighed by the opportunity for regeneration in line with our aspiration. The canopy is controversial, but with regard to the supports being of greater value than the canopy itself, which has suffered general damage. With supports being retained, the forum is satisfied with the impact on the heritage assets. The forum will prefer to see on-site provision of affordable housing, but will accept the 106 contribution for provision elsewhere. With regard to the potential for antisocial behaviour and rough sleeping, the forum welcomes the condition to secure a scheme for crime prevention, such as measures of the CCTV. In common with the much lower areas of Tor Bay, flooding will be a concern, both rainwater and the rising sea levels. The area being raised should mitigate against the sea rising levels and the runoff from the harbour, or to the harbour, and has been assessed and agreed by the planning engineers. The forum therefore supports the recommendation for approval, together with the listed conditions. Thank you. Good one.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman. I once again welcome back Councillor Long for the third time this evening. You know the drill by now, so please make a start when you're ready. Councillor Long.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I'm slightly conscious that I've spoken quite a lot this evening, so as I promised Councillor Kennedy, I will be brief. I will be so. This project forms part of the Town Deal project, and 2.2 million of the 21.9 million Town Deal funding is going towards this scheme, which is very important to the regeneration of Torquay. Judging by my inbox, local residents are keen to see work starting on regenerating this part of town. The Debenhams site was acquired in May 2020 to ensure that a Crossways style situation did not develop. This intervention was welcomed by many residents, businesses and community groups. The vision for the Strand and the Harbourside area is to create an area where pedestrians will stay longer and increase footfall and increase dwell time. The proposed development at Debenhams is designed to enhance this vision with its public square, commercial units and residential units as well. Compared to other areas, Torbay has far fewer people living in its town centres than other areas, and increasing the number of people living the harbour side will contribute to footfall and the local economy. As we've heard, Torquay Neighbourhood Forum have been supportive of the scheme, as has Historic England. Indeed, the report outlines that Historic England considers that Torbay Council's approach to this site has been positive and proactive. The vacant department store is a brownfield site, and building 16 apartments on a brownfield site rather than green fields is positive and will help with our land supply in a small way. There will also be an electric car charging facility, I understand, as well. Consultation responses showed 72% liking what is proposed. And it's vitally important that this regeneration proposed comes about, and frankly I think the public will be mystified if this scheme does not proceed, so I'd really urge colleagues to vote in favour, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Long, and I also welcome back Ed Brown to address the committee once again. So same process as before, Mr. Brown, 5 minutes, and I'll prompt you when you have 1 minute remaining.
Good evening again, Planning Committee. I'm the applicant responsible for the proposals at 12 to 14 The Strand, being the former Debenham site. Prior to the submission of the planning application, thorough public consultation was carried out. This consisted of presentations to the Torquay Town Centre Community Partnership, the Torquay Neighbourhood Forum, an online public exhibition, an in-person public exhibition, and unmanned exhibition boards at Torquay Library. 494 responses were received to the following public exhibition questions. The first question asked, do you support the regeneration of the site and the wider harbourside area? 92.1% replied yes. The second question asked, do you agree that offering town centre living is a good idea? 86.2% replied yes. The third question asked, having looked at the plans, do you like what is being proposed for the site? And 77.3% said yes. Having presented to the Torquay Neighbourhood Forum, I'm pleased to report that the Forum has provided no objections and indeed has spoken before me this evening. The application site falls within a conservation area. Whilst 12 to 14 The Strand is not listed, the canopy is noted as having a positive impact on the conservation area. Due to the sensitive nature of the site and the surrounding built environment, thorough pre-application discussions were carried out with Historic England over a period of 3 months, which resulted in positive changes to the proposed plans. Historic England has raised no objection and considered that the plans to redevelop the Debenham site indicate a positive and proactive approach in bringing forward regeneration in Torquay's historic core. Historic England has also advised that the canopy can go, but are supportive of the proposals to retain the existing columns as lighting and to use the decorative horizontal metalwork as public art contained within the proposed square. The building has been empty since May 2021. The Planner, being the magazine published by the Royal Town Planning Institute in its September-October edition, stated that 15.6% of high street shops across England are vacant, with 4.7% of high street shops across England being persistently vacant for a period of 3 years or more. The proposals provide a commercial ground floor that has been designed in consultation with a commercial consultant and are fit for purpose. Their contribution will make a positive impact in consideration of leisure and retail by Torquay's harbourside. The proposals consist of 16 two-bedroom apartments and 5 commercial units to be either food or retail or a mixture of both on this vacant brownfield site. Also proposes a public square which will complement the proposed public realm works for the wider Strand. The site is located in an extremely sustainable location within walking distance to employment, amenities and public transport. The proposals seek to respond to climate emergency. The energy strategy aims firstly to implement passive design and energy efficiency measures to reduce energy demand and CO2 emissions. This includes an east to west orientation to control passive solar gains, a highly insulated and airtight building envelope, a mechanical ventilation heat recovery system and LED lighting throughout. The strategy includes the use of clean air source technologies. These will include solar PV over the resident parking spaces, providing power for electric car charging and supplementary power for the apartment building. Air source heat pumps providing heating and hot water to apartments and commercial units. And modern methods of construction will be investigated for off-site construction methods to reduce transportation and site waste. A raised ground floor level will protect the development from future flood and storm events. I'd like to finish with one pleasing statistic for the proposals in question. As part of the proposals, a planted biodiverse...
Yeah, 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. A planted biodiverse green roof is located above the rear building. That will provide a diverse mix of wildflowers and habitats. This, alongside with other planting in the wider site, provides a biodiversity net gain betterment of 104%. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. So, members, we now move to questions for the officer. Any questions, members? I'll take Councillor Lewis, then Councillor Darling, and then Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Lewis, please.
I may have missed it. Sorry, late replacement. But is there anything in here about demolition? Whether we need a business plan going forward before demolition takes place?
Sorry, what would be the benefit of the business plan? Is this about...
To show that it's a viable project going forward. I mean, the last thing we want on Torbay, and I'm trying to be positive here, the last thing we want is the site to be demolished and then for the owner to not build on it for a few years to come because it's not viable to do so.
Of course, you heard from Ed Brown there from the TDA about the amount of evidence he's put in as part of this application, the sense of that it's been marketed for a certain amount of time, that's been vacant for a long time, the condition of the building itself, the change in sort of retail practices in the area as well as the country. So there is evidence within the submission that's to go through that process sequentially.
But in planning terms, I thought in planning terms, you could put a condition or something on that a building should not be demolished until it is proved that it is viable to build on it.
I think it's been proved as part of this application, part of the submitted information. It's quite clear. A case has been put and the evidence is really clear that this should be demolished, and this is the regeneration proposal, and this is the best response for this site as part of that application.
Well, it doesn't answer the question because I'm asking you...
It's a package of information with the submitted, within the submission that takes through the design review, the design and access statement and various other pieces of information which clearly shows that this is the best response to the site and that it's the existing building because of its size, its location, its condition, needs to be demolished and replaced with this building.
Yeah, the question is, can you put a condition that the works should commence within a certain period? And I've had it before on planning, where you're not allowed to demolish a building until it is proved viable for you to build, to do something. Otherwise, the building could be demolished and left empty for a long, like Torwood Street, for instance, could be left empty for a long time. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you can't put a condition on that, or I don't know.
There's a clear sense of direction here in terms of the sequence that's gone on from pre-consultation, the engagement with everyone as part of this process in terms of the Historic England Torbay Design Review Panel. There's a sense, there's the funding in place, there's the links with regeneration programme, which we've already heard. I think there's a clear sequence there, and if you feel that that's not enough momentum and it requires a condition, then we can discuss with our legal team. But I don't see the necessity, given the amount of information provided with the application and the momentum going forward, given the regeneration linked to the public realm. But if you think that's not enough, then we can discuss that.
Ms. Ormsby, please.
It would be very unusual to put a condition on saying that you needed to go through a viability assessment prior to demolition. In this particular case, when effectively the council has considerable control through its land ownership, etc., with this site, I would think that there's less need in this instance, because obviously it's within the council's effectively own powers to make that assessment about whether it's an appropriate time to start works. So it would be an unusual condition. It does happen, for example, with listed buildings, where we want to make sure that you know that there is going to be the redevelopment of the listed building is going to take place, for example, at certain times. But it's not something we would regularly do, and there'd have to be a very clear reason as to why it was being done in this particular case.
Okay, fine. I'll leave it to
Councillor Darling, please.
Thank you. I just really wanted to, the residential care, not residential care, the residential section of this application. Clearly one does see second homes being purchased as part of what happens with accommodation around the harbour side and also Airbnb. I know I'm only an occasional visitor to the planning committee, but I'm just wondering if there's any guidance you can give us around any restrictions we're able to base that they are regularly dwelled in rather than being either seen as a second home or Airbnb commercialisation of any of these dwellings that make part of this recommendation.
I would take legal advice whether that's necessary or not in terms of consistency with other applications around the harbour side and other applications in Tor Bay. If you think that's completely necessary given the position, location, size of these residential units, then I'd happy to be advised. But I think it's important to be consistent with other decisions, and I'm not entirely sure whether we've used those conditions on other sites.
But I think what I was trying to clarify is, do we have those powers? And thank you.
Ms. Walmsley or Mr. Ketchum?
Well, Chairman, there would normally be a policy basis for those restrictions on the type of ownership. You know, for example, St Ives obviously have those restrictions, but as I'm not aware of any policy support for such a restriction in this case or in this area.
Yes, I would agree that that we don't have policies that would be able to back that up. Another issue of that, sort of the point that Councillor Lewis was making, is again having restrictions like that can also impact on viability when that's where it's a scheme we're all very keen. Well, we may be keen to see come forward.
Councillor Kennedy, please.
Thank you, Chair. The planning portal's down at the moment, so I've tried to get to look at something for myself and I can't. So, noise and vibration report. I note that one's been done. Now, it did say. Sorry, I'm trying to find in the report, your report. Less of an impact to the properties to the rear, but there is that's negligible. But there is a medium risk to those to the front of the building. So I think particularly that this area is quite lively. Got Yates next door. So quite often it's not so much the noise as it's more the vibration, isn't it, from a thing. So what kind of materials, are we going above the minimum requirements with regards to soundproofing or doing something to prevent the impact of the nighttime economy basically on these properties, please?
The trigger for this was representation from Yates, who were concerned about their opening hours, the economic viability of their site, because of noise and because of having the entrance and exit from that building, understandably. The recommendation was that the applicants provide a noise and vibration report. That was provided. It did say that the front rooms would be a moderate impact, but basically negligible to the rear. The vibration negligible as well. What we need here is a complete balance, I suppose, with the nighttime economy and with residential in urban areas. So when you actually look at the layout plans, when you look at that elevation there are 4 bedrooms which are the most at risk, I suppose, from noise, and they're narrowly laid out on this upper floors within the middle here. So that's clearly not all 16 units, it's 4 units, it's 4 bedrooms, and we therefore consulted with our community safety and they were happy with recommendations which were undertake a stage 2 acoustic review and improve, going above, as your comment was, go above in terms of noise insulation and make sure those front rooms are completely insulated and acoustically at the right level. So yeah, the sequence was there. There was a representation, the applicants responded to the report, and measures are included in the condition to make sure that that stage 2 takes place and the fabric is improved. So it's exactly what you say, it is improved to a high level. That is in place, yes, and the right condensation in place. No, that's okay.
Sorry. The windows then to the front, are they triple glazed?
That detail is conditioned because at the moment we've obviously heard from the TDA about the quality and the basically the sort of the sustainability credentials of that building and retaining heat and things like that, and obviously it's south facing, but the actual, whether it's double or triple glazed or what mechanism they use, it will be at a very high standard. So it's not just noise, it's about light as well and retaining heat. So that is conditioned actually.
Thank you.
Councillor Jackie Thomas, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's on similar lines, really, that, you know, a big concern with the development is noise. The report does recommend an acoustic review. Is it normal for this to be conditioned or more beneficial to have it been carried out and the findings be in front of us in the report today?
Yes, it is normal. The stage 1 report was undertaken. That gave a clear set of recommendations. The recommendation was to go to stage 2. But underneath that, the mitigation is you could improve the acoustic measures within the building. So we followed that sequentially, and it's conditioned, and that's normal. We've used that previously on sites like Crossways and various others, I presume. That is normal to be conditioned because it can be mitigated against.
Yeah, just a bit of a follow-up to that one then. Obviously the building's got balconies, so how is it possible to mitigate for noise and vibration retrospectively, i.e. by planning condition? Surely it is the most important part of the application to get right.
It's not retrospective, but it's conditioned as part of that. There's a solution out there, and we're willing to use a condition to make sure we get those appropriate details to mitigate noise. And those balconies are open, and it's part of urban living, but there's a recognition that when those are shut, that gives the right acoustic measures, so there shouldn't be any noise complaints.
Okay, that's my concern, balconies. All right, thank you.
What's the concern on balconies?
Well, the fact that, you know, we all know that a vibration can trigger off a balcony. You know, it's not as if it's difficult to explain what I mean, but...
The complete clarity, the vibration report is part of the noise report, and the vibration report is very clear that it would be negligible. And it isn't as we see the site now. Presumably when the public realm work goes on, those 2 lanes to 4 lanes to 6 lanes, the width of that site gets widely reduced, the footways get increased. So there's actually a different model there that they've used, basically using the existing and the proposed. So there should be less impact moving forward.
Okay, I'll wait for the debate, but all right, thank you.
Councillor Manning, please.
Yeah. When is this building going to be knocked down? Is it going to be like in the winter time, not in the peak times? And how is the traffic going to go around when that's being built? It's quite not that wide a road there. It's 2 lane, got buses outside. So how is that going to be handled?
There's multiple projects going on at the moment, aren't there, with proposed public realm, but also with what's going on at the moment with the hotel. So I agree that's a valid point, but in terms of delivery and timings, I don't know. There'd be a need to discharge the planning conditions with a rigorous set of additional information. But there is a construction method statement involved, which is around deliveries and timing of work. So it's controlled as much as we can by the proposed planning conditions. I hope that answers your question.
Well, there's going to be quite a few lorries out there, isn't there, when they're knocking the buildings down. You know, is that road wide enough for it, or can it be done from the back of the building, or what? How can it be coped with?
Operationally, that gets covered by the condition. So it's a construction method statement that will cover as much information as we can on that. And it's a site that runs in package. It is in a part of a package with the public realm. So timing, I'm not aware. There might be something that suits timing in terms of seasonally as well as impact. So as much as we can do as part of the planning permission is secure it by condition. But I have no further information on timing, I'm afraid.
Councillor Hill, please.
Thank you, Chairman. My question was on similar lines to do with noise, because I did look at some flats above shops along there. I was advised against them to not to buy them because of noise and vibration, so I won't go along that line. But can you just say, answer one thing, the question of putting conditions on can be done through leases onto whether the property is Airbnb or rented out or whatever the uses these people want to buy the properties for. It can be done on the lease that they cannot rent out over for so many years. It cannot be rented out, it cannot be put onto Airbnb.
There were two areas covered there about noise. I think we've covered noise. I think we've also covered the question from Councillor Darling about the use. So I don't know what the answer to that question is, I'm afraid. I think we've already covered that off with previous answers.
In terms of what can be done in the lease, that's a separate matter that really relates to land ownership and those sorts of things. It's not really a planning matter in terms of the justification in planning in terms of restricting the use. And the answer is, as we've said, the justification for that is found in policy, and we don't have policy requirement here for imposing those conditions in this location.
We don't have policy for it, but it is a possibility through the leases and through other conditions to prevent people from using them as Airbnb, as was suggested earlier.
Well, it may be a possibility, but as I said, that's a land ownership issue which isn't relevant to planning.
Councillor Lewis, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Can you tell me when the plans were submitted to planning, the main plans? Roughly what year?
What year this was applied
or
for?
what month? Yeah.
August this year.
August this year. Okay.
July this year. End of July.
July. Okay.
Any further questions, members? Okay, and we'll move to debate. Any debate? Councillor Chris Lewis, please.
Thank you. I'm very supportive of this scheme. Really great. Good to see Torquay be regenerated. The reason for my questions, I'll just tell you what they were, and the reason for the last one, why it went through when you got the main plans in July of this year, which is good. We have seen, with the Premier Inn, that we've ended up having to pay nearly £6 million more. We are in difficult times, and to get these schemes to stack up is difficult, as we've seen round the Bay and as we saw in the report on the Premier Inn. And we only have 16 bedrooms here, which is about the same number that we had in the Palm Court development, which ended up going into liquidation. And that's why I have concerns that the building could be demolished, and then we find out that we haven't got the money as a council to actually develop that site how we want to do it. I hope I'm wrong, but I do have that reservation at the moment, and it is the national issue at the moment where people are finding it very difficult to get these sort of developments across the line. And I would hate to see it demolished. It doesn't look good now, but if it was demolished and then we couldn't afford to do it, it'd be even worse. So that's my reservation. Really pleased. I think the design's good. I think everything about it is actually brilliant. And let's go ahead and try and do it as soon as possible. But with that caveat, let's not demolish it until we know we can deliver. Thank you.
Any further debate, members? Yes, Councillor Hill, please.
Thank you. Yes, I've got similar views to that. It is a bit of an eyesore as it is at present. Although if we can't afford to continue the development once it's knocked down, then there are issues. It's not going to benefit Torbay at all, and we could be left with a particularly nasty site there. So I'm in favour of it, as in favour of all development down that area. But once again, I have reservations as well. Thank you.
I hear what you're saying, but obviously, and we're all painfully aware, me especially, because it's my ward, obviously, with the terrace car park and the Premier Inn, and obviously, what we had to do there. But none of us have, I think, in terms of every foreseeable scenario going forward, things were thrown off there because of unprecedented global rents, so we never have a crystal ball, and I think I'm satisfied from what I've read and what I've heard that as much as we can be certain about the future and foresee the unforeseen, this is built into what's on offer, so I will be supportive of it. Any further debate, members? Councillor Darling, please.
Sorry, there we are. I'm actually working now, thank you. So I'm just extremely concerned. We've had some peculiar parallels being drawn by colleagues around the table, suggesting that we don't want another situation like we had where the Hampton via Hilton is around the corner from there. The reality is the reason why the local authority took control of this site was to avoid such a situation, so that I understand that we had a greater sense of control around this. It is peculiar that some members around this table talk about laissez-faire and let the market drive this, and yet are trying to fetter this particular application when we're wanting to see positive change around Torquay Harbour. And it is disturbing that they're engaging in this when we need to see positive change around Torquay Harbour. So, Mr Chairman, I'd be very happy to propose the recommendations as laid out within this report without fettering them further, because we need to, we wouldn't be placing any restrictions on other applications. Clearly, we have to assume that the council will be sensible around future decisions, I will end it there. Thank you, Mr Chairman.
Okay. Sorry, so I will go back to Councillor Darling and indeed yourself, Councillor Manning, once we're at that stage, but still on debate for now, and I'll go back to Councillor Lewis, as indicated.
Yeah, I'm very, very disappointed with what Councillor Darling said. I started off by saying how wonderful this was, this development, and I am very pleased for doing it. So, Councillor Darling, don't say that some members around the table are not supportive. We are very supportive, but there is a caveat. And having just said that one development that we're doing is £6 million overspent, you can see, and it is, I think it would be wrong not to bring that out in a proposal that is only a stone's throw from that development. So all I'm saying, really happy with it, really want to go ahead with it, and all I was saying is let's make sure we have all our ducks in a row before we demolish it and start building. That was all I was saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further debate, members? Okay, in which case I'll go back to Councillor Darling, who previously indicated a desire to put a motion.
Thank you. No, I'm very happy to recommend this to the committee and hope that colleagues will support with the recommendations as far as laid out within the report from officers. I think one needs to see positive change around the harbour side, and we need to ensure that that we are giving the planning permission that gives that green light for change. As far as the economics around the viability of this scheme, that is for another place and another day, but we need to give it its best foot forward tonight by giving the green light tonight at the planning committee.
Thank you. And Councillor Manning, you indicated you'd be willing to second.
Yeah, it's nice to see things are happening in Torquay. It needs a lot doing to it to bring it back up to how it used to be. It's looking a bit tired at the moment, and things like this are going to make it a lot better. So bring it on.
Okay, thank you. So, members, we have that motion for approval, motion for approval as per the recommendation in the officer's report. We'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. So that is unanimous. Therefore, the motion is carried and the application is approved. So, members, we now move to the final application of this evening. That being, if I can... Yes, that's right. So, it's broad term somewhere. So members, we are now considering application Beach Cafe, Broadsands Road, Paignton, reference P 2022-0811. sorry, can we have one meeting, please, members? So, Ms Ormsby, although Ms Clark is the officer, you'll be presenting this evening, so please present.
Apologies, I'm just trying to get this in the format that I need it to be in. Okay, right, thank you. So this application is for the formation of additional decking areas and ramps, alterations to existing decking, extensions and alterations to building, formation of sports equipment storage and changing area, a refuse area, ground floor retail unit, internal alterations to increase the internal seating, solar PV and associated works at the Venus Beach Cafe at Broadsands Beach. This application follows a withdrawal of a previous application which officers has advised they would not support primarily due to the adverse visual impacts. The site is located in the countryside area, subject to policy C1 of the Torbay Local Plan. It's in the undeveloped coast and a coastal change management zone. The site's located within flood zone 3 and the promenade is part of the southwest coast path. The site lies adjacent to the Marine Special Area of Conservation and is within the sustenance zone for greater horseshoe bats associated with South Hams Special Area of Conservation. And the Brixham Neighbourhood Plan identifies the site as a settlement gap. The site's also adjacent to a county wildlife site, Broadlands Marsh. And the site is here outlined in red on the plan. So this is an aerial view of the site. So this is the cafe here. You can see the southwest coast path which runs along the promenade here. You can see from its setting that there are no residential dwellings in close proximity to the site. What we're seeing here are all the beach huts, etc., along the promenade. And here are car parks which serve the site and Broadsands Beach in general. So just by way of committee update, a consultation response has been received since the officer report was finalised from Devon and Somerset Fire and Rescue. And they have stated that as the proposal will be subject to building regulations and the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order 2005, a statutory consultation will be undertaken between the building control body and fire authority. Under this process, the proposal must comply with the functional requirements of approved document B of the building regulations to include access requirements for fire service vehicles. These include vehicle access, including minimum road widths, turning facilities for fire service vehicles, and maximum reversing distances of 20 metres. In addition, the provision of appropriate water supplies for firefighting, including appropriate flow rates, may need to be agreed. Information on this should be sourced from the National Guidance document. So this is just quickly running through what is there at the moment. So this is the existing lower ground floor of the Beach Cafe. And as you can see, there's the key features here at the lower ground floor level are the presence of outdoor seating on an informal area in front of the building. This shows the existing ground floor area with an existing exterior terrace here and then the main sort of cafe, kitchen preparation areas. There is a raised deck at this point forward of the building here, with steps dropping down to the benches that are outside at present. And this is the existing elevations of the building. So the proposal, so this is looking at the lower ground floor, and it's showing the reuse of the existing lower ground floor to provide a surf storage and changing area in this section here, accessed from the back. And, sorry, you're not seeing my cursor, are you? Let me just quickly get the point. Okay, so this is the surf storage and changing area in here. This is a general storage area here, and this will be in this area here at the lower ground floor level, a rubbish area and cellar within the area of the building that is to be extended. Looking at the proposed ground floor, so this area here, deck 3, is the existing deck, but which is proposed to be raised by 300 millimetres. Then down here, there's an area for within deck 1, which is a new proposed deck area, an area for open water swimmers with lockers, some cycle storage provided in here. In this blue area here is a lobby porch extension. And then deck 2, so that's retained at the level of the existing raised deck, but is extended out a bit further, and also extends out at that level into this oval area here. And so that's at 1.3 metres. And then there's a new access ramp put in across here, and then this raised deck 1 in this area here, which is 340 mil, so 34 centimetres above the level of the existing promenade, with a post and rope handrail. There's also some planting and pot plants provided to add a bit of greenery and to break up the building. And then in the extension, which is proposed in this corner here, at this level will be freezer and chiller rooms, and there's some reconfiguration to the takeaway and shop in this part of the development here. And this is showing the site and roof plan, and the key thing here is showing solar panels which are proposed on the roof of the building and some ventilation equipment in the back here. These are the front elevations. The key changes here is that wooden cladding is proposed to the front and deck side elevations to improve the overall appearance of the building. And just below sort of the decks, there will be a log finish to the underside of the decks. So some photographs of what's there at the moment. So this is the front of the cafe as it currently is. This is a view of the existing raised deck. This retaining wall will remain at the same height. It will be repainted, but within, so behind the retaining wall, the deck height will increase by 300 mils, but the actual retaining wall and the balustrading will remain as is. So the structure itself will remain at the same height. This is looking down the southeast side of the cafe. No change there, except the render will be repainted. This is a picture of the part of the rear elevation. Another view of the rear elevation as it stands. This is a longer distance, looking back at the back of the cafe and the toilet block. And then, so looking then at the key issues, so these are the key issues and material considerations that are considered in detail in the officer report. The site's located within the countryside zone, the undeveloped coast, and within unidentified identified settlement gap where development is only permitted when it meets certain criteria. As this proposal is to extend an existing building, which is a tourism facility, it can be supported provided there are no adverse impacts on matters such as landscape and seascape character, ecology, heritage, recreation and cultural value. Officers consider that the proposed development will enhance the appearance of the site and the economic viability of the site. The extensions and alterations are modest and heights kept to a minimum to ensure that the views around the site are not adversely impacted. Concerns have been raised about impact on residential amenity. The nearest dwellings are on Broadsands Road and Sycamore Close, the nearest being approximately 270 metres away. At present, there are no planning restrictions on opening hours. The application details and indicate an intent to open until 8 p.m. This is considered to be reasonable and unlikely to have any impact on neighbours. It's not considered likely that the proposed development will have any direct adverse impact on antisocial behaviour in the area and could lead to improvements due to increased use of the area with associated natural surveillance. Residential amenity, ecology, highways and parking, drainage and low carbon development are all considered in detail within the officer report and are considered to be acceptable. These are a list of the development plan policies that have been taken into consideration within this application, and the officer recommendation is approval subject to the conditions as outlined within the report, with the final drafting of conditions delegated to the Divisional Director of Planning, Housing and Climate Emergency, and the resolution of any new material considerations that may come to light following Planning Committee to be delegated to the Divisional Director of Planning, Housing and Climate Emergency, including the addition of any necessary further planning conditions or obligations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Ormsby. We have no registered speakers on this item, so we will move straight to questions for the officer. So members, any questions? Okay, there's no questions. Any debate, members? Councillor Kennedy, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I'm very happy to support this proposal. It's fully in the spirit of the community aspiration stated in the Brixham Peninsula Neighbourhood Plan. Venus Cafe owners have also been contribute widely to the whole Broadsands area, not just the cafe. So, yeah, very supportive of this. Thank you.
Great. Councillor Darling, please.
Thank you, Terry. So Venus Cafe is a brand that we should welcome and endorse. You know, they're clearly part of what makes Torbay the premier resort, and this opportunity here drives towards that premier resort offer that we should be seeing on our coastline. So I would hope that members would be supportive of this recommendation before us this evening.
I've captured yourselves, Councillor Mills and Councillor Jack Thomas. Were you indicating? But first I have Councillor Manning.
No, I've been down here, not that often, but quite often, fair time. It gets quite busy down there. I think it looked very nice to see something. Well, like it looks a nice looking building. I think it'll improve the area, and I think it's something we need down there. It'd be great. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, Councillor Mills.
Yeah, I certainly would also like to support it, and I think it's staying open till late in the evening will certainly have an impact on any antisocial behaviour there is, especially in that back car park. So yes, I'm very much in favour of it.
Councillor Jack Thomas.
Yeah, thank you. For me, this is a good news story that this business is looking to expand, update and offer extra services to their business. I believe that this scheme is going to enhance the area by offering refreshments, etc. to our residents and visitors. Since the owners have taken over this venture, they have breathed new life into what was a rundown building. I think this scheme should be encouraged and applauded. Therefore, I will be moving approval on this scheme with the conditions in the report. Thank you.
Okay, I'll come back to you first when we hit that stage. Councillor Hill, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm in favour of developments along the coast. It does improve things for everyone. In the documents, it said no extra lighting was concerned, and it's sadly I'm coming to it for a question. Is there CCTV? Because the police have shown some concerns about this area.
I just have to check if there's a condition requiring that.
But if you go to the very end of the document, it says something about no lighting. We'll get to the end of it. No additional external lighting shall be installed on the building or terrace areas.
Yes, there is a condition saying no additional external lighting should be installed onto the building or terrace area, and the reason for that would be bats, effectively, because it is in the sustenance zone. Existing external lighting is, we're not obviously preventing, we're not saying things have to be taken away, but no additional lighting should be provided. There is no condition proposed regarding the need for CCTV. I'm not sure whether any is actually currently available or not.
Okay. Councillor Kennedy.
It might just help a little bit. They do have CCTV themselves on the building. We can't, we've looked at Torbay Council having CCTV in the area, and it's difficult, shall we say so, for our side of things, but the cafe does have its own CCTV.
Thank you for that added detail, Councillor Kennedy. If there's no further debate, I'll go back to Councillor Thomas, who indicated a willingness to put forward a motion.
Yep, very happy to move approval on this application along with the reports. Thank you.
Thank you. And a seconder, please. Councillor Mills, I saw your hand first.
I'm very happy to second this as the report.
Great. Well, I don't think we need any further debate, so all those in favour of the motion for approval, please raise your hand. That is unanimous, therefore motion is carried, the application is approved. Members, that was the last item this evening, so I hereby close the meeting.